Can't.
All right. I got my
Hey,
notes.
guys.
All right.
Okay. Hey, guys. All right. So, hello. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I am here with Rob Black, my good friend. And we're going to talk about today about basically the things that frustrate really the lay Cooperite. I am not a lay Cooperite. I am deep in the weeds on this, extremely deep. You know, I could tell you Tina Mucklow's birthday even. So I'm deep in this. So, but Rob's been a Cooperite for a while now, and he's got some good perspective because he was he was in military aviation for his military service. He was a Marine. Marine. Explain what it was, Rob.
Just kind of aircraft firefighter. Like all the airfields have to have firefighters, and the Marines kind of have everything of their own. So we were firefighters at El Toro, Pendleton, all those places have Marine Air Corps firefighters.
Great. Okay. So yeah, and that's one of the things that we often think about Cooper is that he didn't have to be a pilot to know. I mean, it's like I remember. It reminds me of Cooper. Kind of reminds me of Frederick Heinemann. He had been in World War II. He had been a crewman on a B-17, I think, and he had been a radio operator. But one of the comments that the pilots made were they said he knew a lot about the plane, but I don't believe he could have flown it, is what one of the pilots said, which is a good. He's like, he understood the plane, but I don't think he'd fly it. And that's kind of, with Cooper, it's one of the things where if I ever get the chance to talk to Radicek, I want to say what, because really when we talk about Cooper in aviation, we kind of have to take their word for it. Both Tina and Radicek in their 302s say he had very specific knowledge about this aircraft. So whenever we discuss Cooper's knowledge, it's like, well, they were there, and this is them 5 minutes after getting off the plane saying this guy seemed to know what he was talking about. But knowing what you're talking about and being a pilot are different things, and whatever. Sure. But really, let me give some shout outs. I see Nicole and Chrissy, and hey, Josh Bernstein in Oregon, our friend. And yes, there will be some. He's here for the Jerome is here for the DB Cooper Dinosaur Happy Hour. That's great. Hello. And that's great. And hello to Allentown. Hey, Heinemann is your Cooper. That's right, Chris. Hey there. Let's see. Hey, Zodi. Hello to Mrs. Poirot in St. Ives, England. Let's see. Okay.
Up late.
I know she is up late. All right, guys. So shout outs there's Nikki B. Okay. So really, I told Rob that I wanted him to really kind of lead this thing with some questions and things like, what is it that frustrates you about frickin' DB Cooper in this damn case?
Well, so before you get to the case, which some of the short things in the case are frustrating or are pretty obvious, but so I'll just kind of explain where I came in on the case or whatever. So grew up as a kid in the 70s, always into mysteries. I don't even know where I don't even remember learning about Cooper. I just known about DB Cooper since I was a kid. And I don't know if it was from In Search Of or just reading in books about mysteries and everything. But I always knew the basic facts, which is a guy hijacked a plane, got parachutes, jumped out with $200,000, never to be heard from again. And then some of the money was found. So you fast forward that 30 years to, I don't know, early 2010s when podcasts started becoming big, and you get back into it and you start learning about it. And then you learn that there's just, wow, so much more to it. It's just all this to this case, even how it's small. Like it's always cool to me when I say, Cooper existed for 5 years. I mean, five hours, Yep. So you start learning about it. You start reading, I read Bruce's book and Marty's book. You start reading all these books and you start accumulating this knowledge, and which is a good and a bad thing. Because when you start accumulating the knowledge, you learn more about the case and everything, but you get to a certain point, and I'm skipping over quite a bit as far as you learn about the stuff, but when you get to a certain point, and if you've been into true crime, a lot of it, you get to a certain point where you're like, wait a minute. almost all these suspects are suspects because somebody wants them to be a suspect.
Yes.
And
It's a great point.
you find out, and you get into the, I started listening to the Vortex, which is amazing. And you start finding out the people who want this suspect to be DB Cooper, or people just have, if you don't have a book, you just have these theories. And so then you get further deeper in and you kind of already know where things are going with a lot of people. And the tie has been this amazing thing where people are doing pretzels to kind of fit it in sometimes. And so it's really weird to some other cases where sometimes you're just trying to find out who did it. And in this case, there's a community, like I'm in the public aspect. I don't message Chris Cunningham or anything. I'm just in the public aspect. So this is all what I see out in the public. And so you're just kind of like wondering, how's this going to get solved when sort of the evidence gets pulled in all these different directions? And then, the Netflix documentary came out, and which I thought was awful. And the Max one comes out, and which just has good interviews with a lot of the players, but also it kind of shone a spotlight on how there's only one Cooper, and you can't have all these people thinking they knew or know who Cooper was. And so then you get to this point where you're like, where's this going? Like, it seems like there's a whole lot of entertainment and a lot of stuck. I feel sorry if people have been doing this for 20 years, but there's this whole lot of, it seems less investigation and more entertainment a little bit at this point.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah.
And so, I have a buddy, Jeremy, who's into the case, and we went to CooperCon one year, and he just kind of bowed out. He just kind of couldn't handle the sort of the backflips people were doing to try to fit the evidence in some places. Mm-hmm. So, and one aspect of that's kind of frustrating. I think yourself and some other people are just trying to push the case along, which I think is what's needed. And then we'll get into it later, but there's a whole lot of the myth around Cooper and what I think is what the logic around Cooper to me are two different things. And it's really weird to me how the myth of Cooper overrides the logic in a lot of aspects.
Yeah, I agree with you. That's a very good observation you made about the Max, the HBO Max, whatever it is these days. The Max show really was about saying, look, it can't be these people. It's just not, and it is frustrating that he is. I mean, I guess that's really some of the frustration is that if you do read the evidence, he really can be whatever you want him to be. And that's frustrating because you can make Cooper, with say, I don't know, Verdal, you could say that Milton Verdal, that Cooper could be a mad scientist, a guy who just came up with an inventor, basically. This is a very inventive heist. The FBI even say in one of their files, subject manifests extreme inventiveness, and so you could say they was a mad scientist. He could be a Vietnam veteran guy like the Copycats. He could be a guy like McNally, who was just a criminal who came up with a clever scheme. He could be a guy like Bodie in Point Break or something. I mean, he can be all things to all people. And right. There's enough evidence to where you can manipulate it, I guess, in your favor for whatever suspect you have.
So you were talking earlier, and so there's a podcast called Criminal, and they re-released their McNally episode. It's like 30 minutes. It's him talking about what went on. I listened to it. I didn't know that a guy got in his car and rammed the first plane. I didn't know that. And so you hear that, and it doesn't jive with a lot of the Cooper lore. I mean, McNally just saw on the TV and was like, I can do that. And went to the library.
Yeah.
And so, but go ahead. So look,
honestly, I have a really hard time with thinking that Cooper is not Paul Cini copycat. I mean, that's almost, I almost don't want to acknowledge the possibility. I mean, because, Paul Cini happens 13 days earlier. He's gonna basically commit an airline extortion and then jump out with a parachute. And then 13 days later, Cooper does the same thing, but better. Like, there's no doubt, even the FBI, you read the FBI files, man, I mean, you read the vault. I mean, they did not need even a second of convincing to think that he was a Cini copycat. I mean, they knew right away, like, well, because, and they even, I believe that in Brendan Kerner's book, The Skies Belong to Us, which is a good book about the Kathy Kirko and Roger Holder hijacking. He mentions, he has a chart somewhere in there that the FBI developed to where they knew that essentially within 2 weeks of a hijacking, there would be another one. Like within 2 weeks, there's always going to be another one similar. It's just for some reason, it was like a 2-week thing. And here we have Cooper 13 days later doing this. And it's interesting to me, but no. And so, yeah.
Yeah. But see, so if like, just kind of bear with me. If Cini's the OG, right?
Yeah.
He's the OG. So you would say, like, you would think, like, oh, was he, specially trained and had a grudge against the government and decided to use his skills to get back at the man? No, that's not what happened.
Not even close.
It's like, I don't have any other prospects. And he came up with this plan on his own and was
never jumped out. He had never jumped before.
No, never. And so you go to Cooper, who has never heard from him again. And the way you look at two of the people that are just completely different. And I don't know why. Like, why is it when multiple people have done this act and yet we're looking for the badass?
I guess, gosh, it's so complicated because
this is what I heard. I watched you and Breeson's talk, a couple of days ago. And so, and you said something, you said, if you were going to make someone build the person to do the jump, it would be Braden.
Sure.
My reply would be, if you're going to make a composite of the people who actually did it, it would be McNally, or way more McNally.
Yeah.
Gosh, there's not enough parachute experience in there to push them more towards a Braden type. It's more towards a McNally type. I'm not saying it's exactly like Mac, but I'm just saying who you would build and who actually did it are two different people.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
So when you're looking for this person, I think you're not you, but you general. I think you start maybe at the beginning. You started with the Braden types because it's out of your mind that someone would do this.
Yeah.
But then after you have all this data, you start going, well, maybe not. Maybe we're looking in the wrong area.
Well, I mean, this guy didn't even. Cooper is weird. He does some things well and other things.
Sure. Yeah.
Stupidly. He's really inconsistent in a lot of ways. But like the fact that he had no idea what type of parachutes give me parachutes. Well, I mean, that's like saying, give me a car. Like you can give me a VW Bug or something, or you can give me a Mustang. I mean, parachutes are not like, it's not trivial.
Right,
what kind of parachutes you're going to get.
Like it's always been said, if this person jumped out a lot, then they would want something specific.
Yeah. And the issue, and here's the thing, Drew Beeson, Drew's in the chat. He brings up the thing that my issue is that Cooper is better than all the copycats. Like he just is. And it's not because he got lucky. I would say Cooper got away with it because he was the first, really, but he's better anyway, in lots of ways. He remains calm, keeps the passengers unaware, which, I mean, I thought I was driving around doing what I do, thinking about Cooper, just driving around today. And I was thinking, damn, I was like, try to imagine being on a plane that was being actively hijacked and not knowing it. That is really, if you think about it, that's really interesting that they had no idea that there was an active hijacking taking place. And it's because he maintained his composure.
Yeah.
I mean, he had a few freakouts, but not in front of the passengers, at least.
But I would say if you thought a Braden type did this,
Mhm.
would they execute it the way Cooper did? You would think not.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say because I would think he would be more prepared about his. I don't know if Braden would. I would imagine a guy like Braden probably. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, because these guys are adrenaline junkies. Sometimes they would just want to wing it. I don't know. But again, I would say this: our most decorated military copycat is McCoy, by far, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, quite. I mean, he won the second highest award you can win. Okay, and he was in it. He was in the military for probably 8 years by that point, maybe longer. And a legitimate Green Beret, unlike Rackstraw, who just claimed to be one. So McCoy was a guy who did operations and things, special operations. You know, he was a legitimate warrior, and he was very thorough in a lot of ways. I mean, he gave the pilots degrees to follow. Gave them, I mean, he requested specific parachutes as backups because he brought his own parachute on the plane. But also, in case something went wrong, his backups that he ordered were para commanders. And
I think the whole thing with this is that you got to make it think that you're taking somebody with you.
Yeah, I think so. And although McNally, I asked one of those questions that one of the great things about having Martin McNally still be alive and be texting me. He was one of the first people who texted me and said, I got a text, and he was like, Trump got shot. And I'm going, oh, McNally texted me that. Who would have thought? An assassination attempt. Anyway, so you can ask Mac what, because Mac asked for 6 parachutes. And they were jerks about it and brought him 6 reserve front chutes, which is like, they're trying to kill him. Well, they were actually. But I asked him why he did that. And his thought was he wanted to, because he was going to open several and make sure that they weren't, screwed up. So that's why he wanted a bunch, just to make sure, because he figured, okay, if I've opened 2, and if 2 are okay, then the rest should be okay. So that was kind of an odds thing for him. But McCoy, yeah, I mean, a Braden type, you think would be a little more thorough in a lot of ways. And that is kind of a, a knock on a guy like that.
Maybe. What I always think about is, Drew was talking about the guys that he served with, thought that he did it.
Right.
And so I would, if you could ask, you'd say, well, if he was going to do it, how would you do it? And I think they would be way more thorough and way more, I don't think they would say, yeah, just let him bring you parachutes. I just don't see that happening.
Yeah. I mean, because really they could have just brought him. I mean, they could have done what they did to Mac and just brought him front reserves, which, I mean, you're going to live probably. I mean, the thing about, like, that's kind of what bugs me about these things about the canopy sizes and things. I'm like, look, I mean, if a 24-foot canopy was some death sentence, then why is every reserve parachute a 24-foot canopy? Like, from time immemorial.
Yeah. That's another thing that drives me crazy. Yeah. You're not, I'm going to tell you, they're not issuing people stuff in World War II that's going to kill them. I mean, they start out World War II with some not great equipment, especially fighters, but they're just not going to keep that. Why are you keeping it around? It's so bad. Why are you keeping it works.
Around? It's a life preserver. I mean,
right. And I don't want to say, look, I don't know if Braden's Cooper or not. I'm not against that. Some of the pictures that he showed in that kind of presentation were really cool. I just don't like the whole, and this doesn't have to do with Braden, it has to do with the whole investigation about how we don't use some historical record and data to kind of, it gets thrown out the window so that we can present our case.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
And I think I wonder if you had an episode, like you had a podcast episode, just like McNally did, and Cooper told his side of the story, if it would not be calm and collected, and he would be like, man, I was shitting my pants and this and that and that. And so, who knows?
Well, he's chain smoking for a reason. He's doing this.
So, but we always defer to the smoothest badass part of it. And it's just weird to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, I got kind of shook up a little bit. Billy Hurst is a hijacker, is a copycat who was a real kind of pathetic case. Billy Hurst was he may have been the second or third copycat. He was in Texas. He's still alive, actually. I've not reached out to him. I probably should. But Billy Hurst had come back he was a Marine, actually. He'd come back from Vietnam. And I thought Cooper was the only hijacker in history, probably, who had ever kept the passengers unaware, but Billy Hurst did. I learned that literally the day before I went and did the Copycat presentation at CooperCon last year. I was like, oh God, I was just doing some checking up, and it was like all the passengers on newspapers.com were like, we had no idea. And I was like, oh geez. So, I mean, and Billy Hurst was a real, like, he thought the devil was in his brain, and he was a real nutcase at that point. He had major PTSD and was behaving really poorly. Once the passengers got off, he was really like angry and just, so I don't, it's interesting. And what's interesting though, here's what's interesting. We bring up McNally and we bring up Cooper's calmness. Well, I mean, I would say in my experience, from what I have 6 canonical copycats, I call them, like almost like the canonical 6 victims of Jack the Ripper, right? I mean, I have 6 of them. I mean, you've got LaPointe, McCoy, Rob Hetty, Heineman, McNally, and Melvin Fisher, who's the one that didn't jump. Because I count you as a bona fide copycat if you're on the stairs with stuff strapped to you and you just get scared. You're that close. I mean, you're basically the thing. So, and what's interesting is McNally is easily the most calm of any of them. And he's doing something that's totally out of his comfort zone. Never put on. I mean, McNally gets angry when they crash when the guy crashes his car. But I mean, so would I. But then what's funny about Mac is when you meet Mac, you understand that he's the same guy basically he was his whole life. I mean, his personality at least. I mean, he's not a criminal anymore, but his countenance, I guess. And he's always had a good sense of humor, and you can really see it when they say that he started screaming after they crashed, but he was screaming, almost laughing. He goes, God damn, that guy's crazier than I am. And it's like, that's totally what Mac would say, when you meet Mac. But yeah.
Also planned and wanted to jump at night and had never jumped out of a plane before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. I'll say this. It's like Cooper is the best. He is. It's hard to say I don't know, because see, McCoy's hijacking had the best plan, I would think. But he executed it. I guess he executed it okay, but he was nervous. McCoy was a nice guy. I think that, and that's something that's another point we need to bring up, is that in Cooper's calmness is almost, I don't want to, I always hesitate to throw Mac under the bus because he's a friend of mine. A legitimate friend, I would say at this point. But back then he was a crook. He was sitting in his car casing a Brinks truck to rob it when he heard the radio about Cooper. He was like, oh, okay. He was even going to rob a Brinks truck. And
in the podcast, they said one of his crimes was putting fake coins into machines. He wasn't a master criminal, No,
not really. And but I did ask him though, and I made sure to bring up the point when I had him on stage at CooperCon. I made sure to say, hey Mac, when you did this, were you already a felon? He said, yes, I was. And so he was already a felon when he did this crime. So, but the fact he was cool and calm almost speaks to, because it's interesting. Look, McCoy was a guy who would fly out on his own by himself, okay, against orders, without orders, and go blow shit up and rescue people, and just not just rescue Americans. He would go risk his life to rescue the ARVN guys, the South Vietnamese guys. A brave individual, truly a brave man. But he was sweating bullets and was so uncomfortable doing this to people, I think, that it really irked him to be doing this. And whereas Mac was a criminal, Mac's like, okay, his mindset of criminology, and that's almost where I start thinking that Cooper was a crook. Which again, a guy like Braden, that's one area where it does work for a guy like Braden, because Braden was a legitimate criminal as well.
Man, I don't want to this be the pile on Braden thing, but like, if you like again, if you would ask the guys that he served with, what is he going to do when he gets out? Be a truck driver stealing trailers is not what they would have thought he would have said. And so that's the old kind of like they're propping this thing up, and like the Max thing, to me, it's the same kind of phenomenon where like these people want to be associated with this, but the truth I'm saying after his military service, obviously his military service is bonkers. I mean, bonkers, and the book is amazing just for that. But the afterwards, I mean, a truck driver stealing trailers in the 70s is not a master criminal. Like you said, you park him on the side of the road and someone else picks it up and takes it.
Right. And you tell the guy, hey, punch me in the face. So my boss thinks I got,
I mean,
that's sort of thing.
And again, none of this has anything to do with he's Cooper or not. To me, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is that we say these things and like try to fit these whatever size pegs they are into the Cooper peg. And I'm like, let's just back it up a little bit and kind of we don't need like I don't think him stealing trailers has anything to do whether he would commit this crime or not.
Well, okay, so
I also think so. If you think Cooper is a reaction to Cini, then it's not a leap to say like, all right, he did it this way, I'm going to do it this way. I think Cooper wasn't being himself, and I think Cooper thought like, this is the way I'm going to do it. The way I'm going to do it is be smooth.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to portray something that I'm not.
Yes, if you thought Cini was did it all wrong and just kind of spazzed out, I don't know how much he would read about it. But it also seems like some of the other, like you think McCoy was a reaction to Cooper. Like, I can do that, but I'll do it better.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, Cini was a disaster. I mean, if you read Cini's, he was drunk. He was just, he was an alcoholic.
He didn't take the money with him either, did he?
He didn't jump.
Oh, he didn't jump. That's right. Right.
Hit in the head with an axe.
Yeah.
He was trying to unwrap his parachute, and he was going to jump out the side, and they were like, "You can't do that." He didn't have them. They weren't decompressed. I mean, they were in the air. I mean, it was a DC-8. It didn't even have a rear stairs. I mean, but that really the copycats though, they fall into three categories exclusively. I mean, there is no difference. I mean, there's three categories. They're either complete like lunatics. And those guys never did anything. Those guys barely accomplished. I mean, they never got off the ground. They were true mental illness people. Then you have the Vietnam guys. That's about Billy Hurst, Francis Goodell, Hetty, McCoy, LaPointe. These guys, in Rob Hetty's case, he had been back for 2 weeks, okay, from active combat with the 101st Airborne. I mean, he never had a chance to decompress or anything. So then you had those guys, and then you had this other class of like middle-aged losers, essentially. This is Melvin Fisher, this is Heinemann, Merlin St. George, who had his head blown off. These guys were just middle-aged nobodies who had been in the military and had been in the Air Force or Army Air Corps, I guess it was back then. And so they maybe thought they had more experience, or I don't know. I mean, the thing is, Cooper has to know. He seemed to have experience with the 727 because it seems like he watched Cini and said, you can do that on a 727 a lot easier out the tail. So like, where did that come from in his brain, right? So where would he have thought of that? I mean, and to me, it makes me wonder if gosh, I go back and forth because I don't think he was a skydiver because, as we've said, the skydivers all brought their own parachutes because they know the importance of a parachute. It's not just give me a car. It's a thing you need to know how to. They're different.
Right.
So
when I look at it like, okay, to pull this off, all the experiences and knowledges you need, if you add that, like that's 100%. But years ago, I used to think Cooper had 70% and he learned 30%. Now I think he had 30% and learned 70%. Like I think that he had, and I think probably the airplane was his wheelhouse, but this whole that he was kind of all set up and ready to go, I don't buy it. I just think that that he, like you said, he made weird choices and mistakes. I mean, if I had to put money on, he was definitely in the airplane, I would guess, building industry.
Yeah.
But the whole, like, if you like, this is the way my brain works. I just mix it all up. What if Cooper was, let's say there's 12 people that did this. What if Cooper's 11th instead of second? How do we look at him? And I know that's kind of, we can't do that, but I think you said one time, like, Himmelsbach changed his mind after seeing all what happened after him.
Yeah.
And so I think that sort of what's frustrating is, like, the Max doc is really, and even Netflix to a certain point, are almost the periphery of Cooper. They're not really getting at who Cooper is or whatever.
It's Cooper entertainment, essentially.
But I feel like some of the vortex is that too. And, like, you're just, like, pounding your head, like, and I know my theory on this is that there are 1.5 ways to solve this case. And obviously one is DNA.
Yeah.
And the other half, and it's a half because it's not going to happen, is just sifting through union records and work records and military records. That's the only thing you're going to find. I don't think I don't know. Again, this is from a public angle. This is not I don't know what anybody's doing behind the scenes looking at, but, like, you feel like, pardon the pun, but Cooper's not just going to fall out of the sky. I mean, I think Martin's talked about this before, about how he's just, like, looking at these census records and stuff for, like, trying to find someone that fits the bill of this. And I think, like, trying to guess what he was isn't going to get it. It's just not really kind of in play at this place.
Yeah. The number of hours of my life I've spent on newspapers.com looking up obituaries with keywords of Air Corps, metallurgy, metallurgist, Air Corps, pilot, Air Corps, pilot metallurgy, pilot, metallurgist skydive. I mean, trying to find all these, or even, like, I spent a long time, one day, I spent a whole day looking up obituaries for the early 70s for metallurgist, or flight engineer, or aircraft engineer, in cancer or things like that, because maybe the guy was dying. Because it's interesting that Heinemann thought he had been misdiagnosed. So Heinemann was over in Vietnam as a contractor. He was like a electronics engineer guy working for, I forget what, Americo, or I forget which company it was. So some military contractor that served Vietnam. He worked for them. And gosh, I wish I remember the name. Anyway, some quack, I guess, over there diagnosed him with inoperable, like, liver disease or something like this. So he came back all, like, jacked out of his mind, thinking he was dead soon. And McCoy apparently believed he had a brain tumor and wanted to get money for his family before he died. Melvin Fisher claimed he had a disease that was going to kill him, and he had 7 kids that he needed to provide for. So, like,
don't you think those are, like, really important points? Like, so, yeah. Like, we talk, like, again, this is maybe not the core of the Cooper people, but you hear, like, the whole, he just wanted to show that he could do it, that it can be done. Or, he was trying to, obviously he said the grudge thing, but who knows for that. But when you look into it, and you look into, like we were talking before, like, these civilian guys, enlisted guys that have stolen planes before, it's all out of desperation and a little bit of anger. It's
so Rob, I mean, you tell the people what you told me before about these, because you were in the military, and you've been around the military ever since then. You've stayed in the military-ish adjacent.
Yeah, so I work at a Navy base now, and I have there's 2 aspects of it. One is that when I got to El Toro, there was still the legend wasn't as good as the real story, but there was a kid named Lance Corporal Foote who, for medical reasons, fell out of flight training, but he had a background of being a pilot and everything. So A4s don't have keys. You go there, you push up the battery power, and you start it up, and you go. So in the middle of the night, he stole one and flew over to Vegas and flew back. And so when I got sort of kind of involved in Cooper, I started looking about how many times this has happened, and it's happened a fair amount of times, and it's not always pilots that do it. One guy was just on a flight crew, and I have a friend of mine who just got out of the Marines, and he was a crew chief, and he always says, I don't know if I can land the helicopter, but I can damn sure fly a helicopter. And so you start thinking about, like you said earlier, these people who are in this periphery who may have these skills, but not exactly the label or whatever or the title or whatever you want to call it. And so I don't know. It's just the way I look at it. And so you look at these, like the way these people do these things, and the people that do it, all of these guys that stole these planes or helicopters had a triggering moment, or were having issues, or mad about failing how to fly everything. It's, the thought is like, man, some maverick, pardon the pun, just was like, you know what, I'm going to steal a damn plane. And that's not usually what happens. It happens because of either some sort of desperation or issue. And I actually think that there's a little bit of comparison to like what happened with John List, in the sense that he lost his job, but it didn't happen overnight. You stew on it. You're middle-aged. You think things are going to get better. You think you're getting another job. I think that in some ways Cooper had a triggering event, and it was going downhill, and maybe the senior thing put him over the edge. We're like, wow, this is my way out of this.
What was the guy's name who, they call him, what's that kid's name who jumped in the plane in Seattle and crashed? People in the comments, everybody's lagging behind by like a minute, but I forget his name, but the guy, they call him like the flight king or something.
You talking about the barefoot bandit?
No. That guy's smart. No, I'm talking about the guy who jumped in a plane and just took off and joyrode a plane and then crashed it in Seattle a couple years ago. Dang.
Doesn't ring a bell, but
doesn't ring a bell, really. Because I forget his name. He basically just went onto an airport, and he may have been a baggage handler, maybe, and just climbed into an aircraft and took it off.
Right.
And just circled Seattle for a while. And the air traffic controllers or whatever were trying to talk him down out of it. And he said, no, I'm going to just crash it. He was suicidal and just crashed and died. And he was maybe, I don't know, somebody's going to know what he's called. Nikki definitely will know what he's called. But he had kind of a clever name that they called him. But I don't know what his event was. The Horizon 2018 Horizon Air Q400 incident. I forget there was a name they called this guy, but I don't know what made him do that. But as I've said, I didn't do it on the YouTube, and maybe I should put it up on the YouTube, but I did a podcast, the Sky King. That's it. Yeah. Richard Russell, the Sky King, they called him. But,
he didn't sound very Sky King.
No, but it was like, fly Sky King, go, and it's kind of a sad story. He was suicidal and killed himself, but he had a last joyride, I guess.
Right.
I for people who listen to the podcast version of this, I did like a 10-minute podcast a while back where I just said, try to really imagine yourself doing this. Like, I mean, you and I, Rob, are not going to wake up tomorrow morning and go threaten to murder a plane full of people. I mean, hopefully nobody listening to this would even comprehend. I mean, that is a different level of like mania in your head to do that. You are either a insane criminal like McNally, or you've got some major trauma to make you do that to people. Right. And so Cooper, the idea of Cooper, like I think Tim Wallace's, they stole it from me. Actually, I stole it from Chris Cunningham is the one who came up with, Chris Cunningham likes to say that Eric thinks of Cooper as Han Solo in a business suit. Right. And that's not it. And I think that's to your point about the vortex as a whole, wants Cooper to be Han Solo in a business suit, a rogue, essentially, a lovable rogue, when the reality is he's not really.
No, I mean,
an asshole, really.
I mean, like, if I was to quickly profile Cooper, and I think Cooper's a lot of people that we've met. I think he had some kind of job that was mediocre, but lifted up his life enough to where he felt okay about himself. Then that goes away. And he's probably not very good at his job. He's okay. He's probably the guy that everybody talks to at work, but no one really hangs out with all the time, except for maybe at the bar. He's nobody's best friend,
Yep.
And I think he just kind of, I don't think, I don't like Han Solo achieves stuff. Han Solo, kind of makes things happen. I think you look at these things over and over and over, and we overestimate who does them. And then we find out who does them. We kind of just don't want to, we're talking about earlier, the Summers man, CIA agent,
KGB.
spy, yes, all this stuff. No, just a guy with mental issues,
Yeah.
And so I know it's not sexy and it's not fun and probably doesn't sell books, but if you kind of eventually want to figure out who did this, I think that's where you have to look.
Yes. And I mean, as somebody who I've defended over, I don't know how many clients I've had criminal defense. I mean, I know I've prosecuted over 1,000 people when I was a prosecutor.
Yes.
They're all losers, really. I mean, I hate to say it, I hate to be blunt and mean that way. But generally people who are level-headed and just living their lives are not going to be criminals. I mean, especially, and I don't want to say that because look, I mean, a great majority of them, the people that are prosecuted and people I defended, are drug users. Okay, they have drug problems. They're not criminals really. They have mental health. I mean, that's a physical issue. It's an addiction issue. But when you break into somebody's house or you go rob somebody at gunpoint or rob a store, you're an asshole. I mean, your brain's not working right for whatever reason. And there was a suspect who I came across recently who I really like. He's a new guy. I mean, this is what's funny about this whole thing. When you're talking about the Max show, they focused on the usual suspects. Okay, and Netflix, to an extent, we've got Barb Dayton, Weber, McCoy, who else? LD Cooper, Rackstraw. It's the same gossip. It's the same dudes.
Yes.
And people get so hung up on it. Oh, was it this guy or was it gossip? And I'm like, you spend any amount of time in the FBI FOIA files, you will find suspects who kick the dog shit out of all those people.
Right.
You go, wow. Now that is a guy who could, like for example, recently I was shocked to find a guy. I'm like, and I'm going, Jesus. I'm like messaging people, messaging Cunningham, people going, oh, this guy might be Cooper here. There's a guy who essentially he's the only guy I've ever, and like I said, I've literally, people don't believe me, I have read through every single file. I mean, 45,000 of them. Okay. Now it sounds like a lot, but as they come out every month, I'll read 300, 400 images. I mean, it adds up, but this is the only suspect I have. I mean, yeah, there were 1,062 suspect files. I mean, that doesn't mean there are 1,000 suspects. I mean, I would say 900 maybe official suspects got a number, but to put a point on it, the ones got a number who the FBI wanted to have a dedicated file folder. A lot of these guys who were suspects, it was one interview and that was it. So, I mean, even for example, like Barb Dayton never got an FBI number. Gossett never got an FBI number. Larry never wanted to give Gossett because Gossett was Larry's when Larry was there. Gossett didn't want to give Gossett a file number. But anyway, this guy is the only time I've ever seen a suspect who was angry. He was when the FBI interviewed him, they said he was extremely hostile, refused to even look at the sketch. He just said that's not me and wouldn't look at it. They thought that was weird. This guy had been a officer in the Air Corps or the Air Force, I guess, by then in the Korean War. Okay, he'd come back. He was a college graduate. He'd come back and become a Boeing flight engineer. Okay, for Boeing, and then in '68, he had got laid off from Boeing or fired and became a truck driver because he had no other thing to do. And it was not happy doing that, clearly. And bitched and moaned about it. They talked to his ex-girlfriend. She's like, oh yeah, hated it. And they talked, he apparently was a weird guy. Didn't have a lot of friends. They said he had no friends, essentially. His girlfriend said she never met anybody around him. He thought people were trying to poison him all the time. He refused to eat food that wasn't prepared by him because he was afraid he's afraid someone's going to poison him. It's a little bit delusional, but very smart, they said. But I'm trying to think what else. Oh yeah, he spent time in a VA mental hospital in Seattle. Okay, so that checks a box. And the FBI agents, even in the file, you can see they go, he looks remarkably like the description and the sketch. He's 6 foot tall. He's swarthy. He has, and I found a photo of the guy. He's got this kind of weird lip from his height in high school. It's like, yeah. And they say he's olive skinned, and he is 43 at the time. And it's like, God almighty, and he was living at the time in a tent city outside Seattle, which you wonder, well, things never change, do they? Because like, this is 72. There's tent cities in Seattle. What's new? But the point is, a guy like that checks way more boxes, at least for what we want, what I think a copycat or these guys were. A guy who was unemployed, was already a little crazy to begin with, had some kind of trauma that it ended up in a mental hospital for, but had the background adjacent, is what you're saying. Sure. So like, for example, you spent your career on airfields, right? So like did you you guys wear headsets that could hear what the pilots were saying, or?
No, we had, so like sometimes so we were basically, we call them the baked potato, that silver fire suit that you see with the big helmet on. But, all the trucks had radios. Whoever was the leader at that point would talk to air traffic control, and so they could talk to the pilot, and then back to us. I think there was on a few planes a way to comm into the side of the aircraft. But
okay, because like what's weird about Cooper is, for one thing, now that is one thing that's interesting. And Paul Cini, that is the frustrating thing. That's kind of like almost felt frustrating. Paul Cini's existence is frustrating to me, because what's funny is we call him the OG. I mean, he's the original gangster Cooper, and this guy had no aviation experience, like literally none. And so he basically throws
all on the news. What's that?
I said he basically throws all of our preconceived notions out the window. The fact that the guy who came up with this had no ties to aviation. So right. It's kind of weird, because it almost slaps me in the face, because I always say that Cooper had to have some kind of parachute instinct or experience, because I'm like, well, I've never been scuba diving. I'm not going to come up with a scuba diving heist. That's just I'm not going to do that. And so why would your brain even come up with this? Whereas Cini was drinking beer on his couch and was watching, I think it was, it was the, there's so many guys. It was the first extortion hijacking. It was the guy who asked for $100 million in DC. Right. And they gave him like mailbags out there. Anyway, he was like, and Cini, there's a great article I found that Paul Cini was interviewed in the late 70s from prison. And it's the only detailed Cini thing I've ever read. And because I think the Canadians don't like to talk about it, because they're too polite to have hijackers. So you never find anything in the papers about Paul Cini, except for this one detailed article. And Cini said, he was like, all these hijackers, like, how are they going to escape? Sure, you can get $100 million, but how are you going to get out? How are you going to escape?
Right.
And so that was his thinking. And that's why he came up with the parachute stuff. So, but again, Cooper is frustrating because just by himself, because he is so odd. And Augie actually messaged me, and Augie the Italian stallion Augie, messaged me and asked if Paul Sini's still alive, and he actually is. But what's funny is there's another Paul Sini in Canada who's the exact same age, who I found his number. I don't like cold calling people. I'm kind of shy like that. So whenever I need a cold call, I give it to Chris Cunningham. He has no problem. So Chris Cunningham called Paul Sini, called this Paul Sini,
Right.
okay, who lived in the same region of Canada, even as the you know. And the guy answered the phone, and he was like, "Hey, you know," and the guy said, "Yeah, I get that a lot. People always call me, and they've said that for years. People call me about being Paul Sini, and I'm not the guy, and yada yada yada, and you know, blah blah blah." He said, "I'm kind of getting upset about it these days." And Chris was like, "Well, I'm sorry, you know." He goes, "It's okay." He was real nice. He goes, "It's okay, you know." But like, and Chris reports back to me, and I'm like, "You may have talked to Paul Sini."
Right.
You just didn't want to talk about it, really.
I mean, yeah, like, you know, someone calls for me at work and they're looking for me, but they're from the outside. I'm like, I don't do that anymore. I got switched to another job, you know, but
Yeah,
say
or
that too.
yeah, or somebody, you know, yeah, you're right. If they spam call, if I receive a spam call to my law firm, I'm like, I don't know who that is. And like, it's me, you know, I'm like, I don't know who that is. You know,
So
I'm saying it could have been that.
Using my like 100% thing, what percentage of the knowledge do you think he had?
Whew. I mean,
There's parachutes,
yeah,
there's the plane, there's the area, there's sort of
I don't know
I
what he
guess
doesn't.
crime.
I don't know what he does. I mean, maybe 50-50, I guess. I mean, I don't know, but I mean, 13 days isn't long to come up with a plan. And his plan worked. I mean, it did. Now the weird thing about Cooper is still, I cannot wrap my brain around him just winging his drop zone, which he did. I mean, he had no way to know. And we can come up with all these things and say, well, he gave them a configuration that required them to take V23, but not really. V23 was come up with. Paul Soderlund in Minneapolis looked at flight path maps and was like, oh, okay, well, I think we need to take V23 down to Sacramento. You need to hop on
V23 a couple miles wide.
It's 10 miles wide.
Yeah.
At the time, it was 10 miles wide. He could have been, and they had freedom to be anywhere within those 10 miles. Now they kept down the middle of it as well. And again, the ham sandwich guy at the Portland Tower, according to Eric, said they were a mile east of the center line. And then of course, Cliff Ammerman, as best he could tell, said they never strayed from the middle of V23 as far as he could tell on his stuff.
Yeah, he said that if they stayed in it, there wouldn't be alarm unless they went out of it, which is kind of a wide area.
It is. And so even if Cooper knew that, you know, and again, Cooper never specified a speed. Like, I mean, and you can say that, well, you know, gear down, they can't fly over. I mean, yeah, okay, he may have set up a condition where they had a max speed they couldn't go past without tearing the gear off, I guess. But if you're going to jump to a spot, you need to have, know where, how long it's going to take to get there. And
there's no chance he was jumping to a spot.
No
chance.
Zero, none. And the FBI unequivocally say that. Absolutely. They say there's zero chance. And that's why they don't think he had an accomplice. Because it's like, how would he even hook up with an accomplice? I mean, I do think he wanted to. I think it makes, like, every copycat except for Mac got screwed up by the delays and things like that. He got kind of discombobulated. But every copycat who jumped was jumping to a spot or trying. They jumped where they wanted to jump. So I don't think Cooper. I think he jumped roughly where he wanted to jump, and it makes sense. It started in Portland. His transportation's probably in Portland. If he drove himself there and took a cab, so I think that makes sense.
I think it was on the Wikipedia page, and you might have put it there, where later on, like an anonymous FBI agent was like, after kind of all of these had happened, he was like, no, he could have walked away. He just could have walked away. We were looking in the wrong area. He could have just walked away. And I'm like, I think it can be that simple sometimes.
Yeah.
I think, Mac, it's insane that Mac lands, busts himself up a little bit.
Concussion.
He's walking. A cop drives by and gives him a ride into town.
Not just a cop, the sheriff of the county.
Yes.
himself.
So that's why you look at these and look, they're not carbon copies, but like there's these things where you're like, if we had this story and we didn't know, like, hey, a cop picked a guy up and let him go, it's either a conspiracy or this or that or anything. But the fact is, this crazy shit happens.
Yeah.
Like, how did the cop just go, hey, look, we're taking you in, at least kind of, he brings him into town and Mac hangs out at a bar.
Yeah. And then ended up spending time in the same hotel with FBI agents.
Got out of the town.
Yeah. Look, McNally slept in his own bed for 5 days. I mean, that's shocking.
I know in the podcast, they said he was planning to do it again.
He was. Absolutely. He was. He'll tell you that. The thing about Mac is like, I told people this when I first started talking to Mac. I said Martin McNally's existence should scare the hell out of everybody in the Cooper Vortex, because you could live 1,000,000 lifetimes if Mac had got away with it. If we'd be the Robert Wilson mystery group for one thing, because his hijacking is way more cooler than Cooper's, like way by exponentially cooler. Just the guy drunk driving into it and just all these other things, But you could live 1,000,000 lifetimes investigating the Robert Wilson mystery, and you would never come across Martin McNally, unemployed gas station attendant from Wyandotte, Michigan, being the guy. Never. In fact, we'd be doing the same thing that the FBI did with him, saying he was just pretending to be stupid. No way. I mean, the FBI literally said that in the newspaper. They said, we're looking for a skydiver. We believe he was feigning ignorance by being stupid. It's like, no, that's just Mac, So yeah, a guy like Mac should really terrify us for Cooper. And I know Chris Cunningham is really on that bandwagon. You're kind of, not many people think like you. And I'm kind of in the middle there. I think he might be a little better than we give him credit for. I mean,
sure.
I don't know. But you and Chris Cunningham certainly are we really should take notice that Cooper may have been a doofus and just got lucky. Really.
I mean, I really think that he was sort of playing a role, and good on him. It's like when I know this is simple thinking, but everybody does it, but somehow we don't. You put on a pair of sunglasses to kind of have not someone look in your eyes. You can kind of be different than yourself.
Right.
And just something little like that. I think he gets really lucky if that plane's full. He's having more issues with the people closer to him and everything. It's just, if one of the passengers, the drunk guy gets a little more belligerent, whatever, things are different, or whatever. And I don't have, I hear people talking like yourself or even Eric or even the knowledge you guys have about this is insane. I'm the one that kind of looks at all these historical things where we, even the Golden State Killer, they kind of, and then you find out who it is, and the story is much more simple and much more, actually scary, because it's so, like you said, it's so normal. And the guy could have worked he could have just done a riveter in a Boeing factory, like we're jacking him up, and he just might have been hiding in plain sight. And I'm not rooting for that. It's awesome when they're badasses and crazy shit. But I mean, just over and over and over, this is not what happens.
Well, it's like we say. I mean, Braden is who you would want Cooper to be. I mean, if like Braden is who, I always go back to Ted, because it's like, if you're making a movie, it fits his life. It's almost like it's this Braden's life is almost a Tarantino movie. It's just like, he's this child soldier. He wins 3 Bronze Stars when he's 16 years old. Okay. I mean, he's crawling across, I found that article. It was a miracle. I don't know how I found that, but like, it was something, and it was like a post from it was like an internet post from like 1999. Okay. And it was a guy, a World War II veteran. I don't know how a World War II veteran got on the internet in 99, but must have been a computer guy. But he was telling a story. He said, when I was in the 101st, and then we were in Bastogne, surrounded, there was this kid named like Teddy Braden, who would go crawl out at night with a knife, crawl into the German foxholes and kill them, and come crawling back. it's like, what the hell?
I mean, that's why we talk about with this Cooper thing. You read they had a group, several groups that jumped into and put listening devices in.
That was him in North Vietnam.
It's insane. That's insane.
Terrifying.
Yes. They even had I think it was a Wikipedia page or something I saw where they had a group land on top of an NBA unit and just get mowed down.
Yeah.
That
was his other, that was actually, see his team, they were called, he was on Team Colorado. And I feel like there was one of the other teams, I think the team that was with him,
right,
were wiped out to a man. Yeah. I think because they did land on top of an NBA unit. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's
something to the theory like doing what Cooper did might not have been enough for him. I mean, you're talking about these insane stuff, and like, so if you look into, I was listening to some podcast one time, and they were talking about, it was again someone they couldn't figure out, and they were like, maybe it was the special forces guy that came back. And you're like, that's not what usually happens. That's not usually where these people go. Yeah. I mean, granted, Braden became a criminal, but it's not. They don't become Ocean's 11 stuff. These guys are kind of damaged and kind of still have a little bit of morality about them and stuff. And so, my dad was a Vietnam vet. Like, it's not in the direction they usually go. And I don't know if that's the direction they go when they're older either. But like, it's almost, I mean, a movie should be made about Brain, and it doesn't even have to include Cooper. That's the kind of thing that. But
it's like McCoy. It's like McCoy doesn't have to be Cooper. He can just be McCoy.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, and that's fine. But yeah, so that's frustrating. So we talked about Cooper being frustrating himself. What are some of the other things that frustrate you just about the case, other than just who Cooper's personality?
I mean, I love the Vortex. I can't listen to the Cooper is Zodiac pod, those episodes. I can't do that.
Well, yeah.
And more power to him for doing all those episodes. But it is kind of weird. Like, there's a puzzle to be solved here, and it gets pulled in these crazy directions, and I'm just not kind of entertained by that at all. And I think that, so my friend Jeremy and I talk, and Jeremy and I have different minds. Jeremy's a really smart guy. And we come up, before, I think he got it from you. I never knew about the extra bag. Mm. And years ago, Jeremy runs up to me. He's like, what do you know about this extra bag? And I was like, I don't really know about it. And it's like, you watch all these, whether it's a History Channel, whatever, and they put up this thing where he's in loafers and this and that, and he's unprepared and everything. And that changes in a heartbeat if he's got a few things in that bag.
Yeah.
And he's not bringing the bag on for an extra change of clothes or something silly like that, an extra book or something like that. It's a purpose. And so like, that never gets talked about. We're insanely into the idea that why did he give the note before they took off? Why did he give her the note before they even left the ground? Because there's all bunch of downsides of that and no upsides of that.
Yeah, that's a weird one. And
then we talked about earlier, it's weird to me that he doesn't have an accent. Everybody wants him to put him from all these different places. And, as I told you earlier, I was in the Marines in the 80s, and half of our unit had accents.
Sure.
I had a guy from Boston in my, I was a roommate with, and we had guys from New York. We had guys from the South. We had, minority guys, if you're talking about like, olive skin or whatever. And all of them had accents. I mean, even I have a little bit of a Southern accent. And so it's weird to me, like these sort of, you would think in sort of an investigation environment, like you would kind of try to look like, what do we have? What do we have to grasp onto? It seems like we're kind of just juggling the same old flight pattern and this and kind of stuff other in the air to try to figure it out. And it's not really moving the ball forward.
Okay. So I think that what you're saying is that, and I see people commenting that basically there are things, and it frustrates me too. And that's why, like in my book, and I really want to hammer these things. When I always hammer these things, whenever I mean, if I feel like if I say them enough, people will start. And I've seen a shift in the vortex since we've started doing podcasts and things about this stuff. I mean, people know about the bags and things like that, because like the bag is a game changer, a huge game changer, because obviously whatever was in the bag was not used during the hijacking. So it could only be things to be used in his jump or for his escape. That's it. There's no other reason to have it. Of course, Eric, dear Eric, I love Eric, but like him saying that maybe he had the bed sheet in the bag. It's like, Eric, but like, no, I mean, what's interesting, and when I started doing the copycat research for that book before I shifted to this book, they all had these kind of like bags with them that weren't that had things in them. I mean, Mac had one, McCoy had one, and LaPointe had one, and what was in there was like gloves and some rope. A couple of them had rope, a pistol, some food. I think like LaPointe had a canteen or something. I mean, they had, McCoy had an altimeter and some of his skydiving gear in there, which is smart. And of course, Rob Hetty's interesting because Rob Hetty was literally already wearing everything he needed to jump when he hijacked the plane. I just,
which is really the way to go.
Yeah, he literally ran. I mean, always like Rob's interesting. When I remember looking up trying to find the aliases that everybody used when they bought their ticket. And of course, Rob doesn't have one because Rob jumped a gate and ran onto a plane that was deboarding. Okay. And he was already wearing his parachute. He had a windbreaker over it and a bag over his head, like a lynch mob type bag, but yeah, so the mystery bag is one that really is confounding. That's not mentioned more. And even like the FBI guys, like even like Larry, when Larry, like Larry is writing the forward to my book. I mean, Larry's a friend, a legitimate. I mean, I text Larry all the time and he's become a friend of mine. But even Larry seemed to have a blind spot back in the day. In like, you see his interviews in like 08, 09, when he was actually on the case. And, he was misunderstanding things. He was misunderstanding that both parachutes were military parachutes. He was still going along with he was an idiot because he chose a military chute instead of a civilian chute. Well, now we know, honestly, even if they weren't, even if that was the case, we know now that actually, if he had a choice between a civilian modern rig and a military chute, the military chute would have been the better alternative because it's going to open up no matter what. They're reliable. The dummy chute, we talk about like, Cooper, depending on how he jumped with the dummy chute. Well, he didn't because he couldn't have. There's no D rings, right? And what's interesting about that is literally the next day we have the Seattle like Post Intelligence or whatever it is has an article where they're talking to the FBI and the FBI are like, yeah, one of the chutes we found out was an instructional parachute, but it wasn't on the plane. And we're confused about what happened to it because it's our understanding that the harnesses he was given, that he could not have equipped these reserve chutes to his harnesses. So, I mean, that's literally the day after Cooper. And we went 50 years damn near after that, and that's really, that's frustrating to me.
Well, I think that's the whole thing about like, there's the Cooper aspect of it for me, and there's the investigation aspect. And the investigation aspect is you hear people say it all the time. I think Tom Kay said at CooperCon one time that he watched a video from him from 2007 and all the things that he said in the video. And now I'm paraphrasing. I'm not sure. I hope I'm saying it right. That all the things that he said in that video, he doesn't believe anymore. So like, we're like this victim of the present. So we're like, oh, this is right. This is right. Meanwhile, 4 years from now, we'll think something totally different. I think like everything should be investigated. Obviously, every avenue should be looked into. But there's things like, to me, the tie doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. I don't think Cooper was management. this doesn't make sense to me. Obviously, we have to do it.
Hmm.
But even if you don't go like that, Tom will say, here's the things on the tie. Well, I don't know what it means.
Well, and he shifted. I mean, remember it was Tektronix for a while.
Yeah.
And then it was RMI. And then
Yeah.
now it's, Rim Crew or whatever. And,
Right.
And now, we're about to get more because, they're actually, I think Tom said that they're fast tracking. Macron is like, because, they're doing a new analysis on the sticky stub from the knot, which is where most of the particles are, which is pretty telling, which, a lot of people, even myself, I kept open the possibility that maybe some of this was post hijacking contamination. But that seems to be not true now that we know that. I mean, we can really literally almost see on the stubs and stuff where his fingers were touching the tie, even like, because he had on his fingers, whoever this person was. So I don't think it was, I think whoever owned that tie. And I don't really buy the thrift store thing because the tie had a burn hole in it, it had been torn up in a spot where a tie tack had gone through it. And they could tell from some of the fragments of gold that or some of the indentions on it that the tie bar, the tie clip had been on there for a while, for years probably. So,
I mean, it's one of those things like I think in any these cases where you're like, it's a possibility, but it's overwhelmingly likely that it's a tie. Like you don't throw everything out. You don't just, to me, I don't, you always kind of leave these little things in the back of your mind, but it's most likely his tie.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
I just don't know if, and again, granted, there's a lot less evidence in this case. So you're going to chase whatever you can chase, but I don't know. It isn't I don't think it's how this case is going to be solved.
Well, and again, there's the frustration is that all of the avenues about that this case could have been solved have been like they're roadblocks. I mean, obviously the cigarette butts is the one that's most often discussed. And that's another thing that we now know, thanks to the FBI files, is we know years ago when those first came out, we found the 302 one day. Everybody's just scrolling through the FBI files and says, cigarette butts were destroyed. It's like, what? Oh my God. And even Larry, the best thing about Larry is like he tried, but even, where'd Larry, I don't know how those guys dealt with this when they didn't have like OCR scanning. Like, for example, like I have all 45,000 files in a big thing. I can type in butts and boom, every FBI file that was ever made that's been released that mentions butts pops up, right? Or loafers or shoes, whatever. I mean, Larry couldn't do that, right? So Larry missed that one memo that says, Vegas destroyed the cigarette butts for lacking evidentiary value.
Right.
So the cigarette butts, that's frustrating. Then the hair slide is the one that, I know Chris Cunningham is good friends with Colleen Fitzpatrick, who's actually the one who solved Somerton Man. She's the queen of DNA. Right. And she said, look, if we get that hair slide, we will find who this guy is. Because, now the technology has advanced to the point where, it used to require a root of hair to do DNA testing. Now the hair follicle itself can give you DNA. That was in 2013. And, technology, that's the one hope, I guess, is that technology is increasing exponentially. But the problem is our evidence is not increasing. So, I mean, really all we have is, there are efforts to get the shroud lines tested, because he did have to, sawing through shroud lines was not simple. I mean, they're tight. So he would have had to grab it. And so he's pulling skin cells off. And Colleen Fitzpatrick said all she needs is 2 skin cells, and that's it. So, and I don't think the shroud lines were handled much by agents over the years. I don't think they really cared much about it. So that's a possibility. But the hair slide, I think that, and I don't think that, I guess, yeah. I think what frustrates me, and here's a frustration for me, is I'm glad I wouldn't have a book if we didn't have the FBI files. I wouldn't be doing this podcast probably if we didn't have the files. Because it's basically there has been a seismic shift. We have gone from, I mentioned, that Bruce is kind of like, no offense to him, but like, and he'll probably admit it. I mean, Bruce is BC, and like we're in the 80 now.
Right.
And it's a miracle that he even got. I mean, I'm the proud owner actually of Bruce's notes. Like I've got a huge box over here that's got all of his handwritten notes that he took over the years because he's out of the vortex. But I've got his notes. I mean, I'm the heir apparent, I guess.
What's the possibility that in between the 302s and people's notes and everything that the name is in there somewhere?
Ooh, that's a good question. God,
because a lot of times it is.
I'm going to say no. Just probability, numbers. I mean, talking about again, million. I mean, how many men could have done this?
That's the thing. We've learned a lot.
Yeah, several million. I mean, and see, Tom's very optimistic. Tom says he thinks he can narrow it down to 3,000 or 4,000 guys who would have had this specific, employment, I guess. Which possibly, I mean, I do think it was his tie. I mean, I just do. But whether it was his brother-in-law's tie is the issue. I mean, how long he had the tie. I mean, it was his tie as far as he was wearing it that day. Sure. But because people say, oh, well, maybe it was left on the plane. Well, no, it was found in his seat. So unless he was sitting on his tie,
I think you got to roll with it. It's his tie. You got to go. You got to go that direction.
Sure. But how long it had been his tie, or whether it was his brother-in-law's tie, or his brother's, or his dad's, even maybe. I mean, who knows? His uncles. I mean, but again, people who discount the tie, I don't like that because what else do we have? It is a legitimate source of evidence. And hey, I mean,
I'm not a big fan of it. It doesn't jive with who I think Cooper might have been. But like you said, it's what you got. That's all you got right now. I mean, you got to go down the road. I wonder if 3 years from now, it's just another, kind of footnote into all this whole thing.
Like I hope not. But I hope it leads us to somebody. I mean, and like I said, I mean, a guy like the person who I found last, month in those 302s, who worked at Boeing, had been in the VA nut house, was weird, was eccentric, and was not doing something he wanted to be doing for his life, driving a truck. You find a guy like that who had worked in the metallurgy department or somewhere for Boeing or something. Then you're looking at some. But like you said, Cooper has to have some sort of event probably that puts him a divorce or a cancer diagnosis or something. I mean, most guys aren't going to wake up and go, I can do that. Let me just do that. So I don't know.
So one of the other things that frustrates me, and most of the people who are serious about Cooper don't fall into this trap, but it's the whole the just throwaway phrase that's evidence, like man, people go missing all the time, or that kind of throwaway thing where they're explaining something by just saying that.
Yeah.
I obviously enjoyed listening to Larry talk about the case, but if he thinks all right, if you think Cooper splatted that night, right? That's not the sole event. You have to add that up with he lived a life where no one was missing him, which is work, landlord, all that stuff. Yeah. He lived a life where nobody would recognize him. I mean, things everywhere.
Yeah.
So all these other events that you have to add on to, or like, if you think, is it possible? Absolutely, sure. But then people will just say, everybody went missing back then. Well, no, actually people went missing, but the Cooper, a male like 35 to 45 or 45 to 55, was the smallest amount of percentage of people that went missing.
Because men had responsibilities.
Then you got to throw in his height and hair type and all that other stuff. And you're getting these really small numbers. So is it possible? But you don't throw away it's like how'd the money get Tina Bar? Well, it landed in the Columbia and ended up there. It's just kind of these throwaway. That's one of the frustrating things that people, and again, the serious people don't do it as much, but this whole kind of, that's just what happened and move on to the next thing.
Oh yeah, he died. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you have to you have to, all these series of events have, just like when Martin came out with these people, that the study of people that ejected in the war, like, or people who don't really know about how hard it is to die in a skydiving jump.
Yes.
And so they throw away these little lines. You're like, no, really look into it. And, I always, it's a weird comp, but like, if something is, if it's 90 whatever % chance that it's going to happen, like, think of it like, all right, I'll bet you that Steph Curry is going to miss this free throw. You're probably going to lose.
Yeah.
Because he's probably going to make it.
Right.
So when you have these, granted, probabilities are not complete, but when you add all these things together, it does paint a picture of like, well, not to mention that other people lived through the jump and all this other stuff. And so you probably come up with a picture that, okay, he jumped, he lived, and it's more than likely he went back home. Like that, I think the FBI agent said it. He probably slept in his own bed the next night.
Yeah, like McNally did. I mean, or McCoy did. McCoy slept in his bed. I mean, but
it's more than likely what happened.
Well, yeah. So that's been my thing, and that is a frustrating thing because, I mean, there are people who say, "Oh, well, you just want him to live because you like the guy." Or, I mean, no, I don't care. I mean, I'm not married to Cooper. I have no idea. He could have splatted down that night. I don't care. It doesn't bother me. I mean, if that's where the evidence led me, then sure. But I mean, it's like this, and I'll read this, so I actually got into it with Jude the other day about this because he's part of this, the dead camp people. And I love Jude, but I argue about him. I'm like, look, man, just simple math. Okay. Because you have to have all these things together. It's not just he died.
Yes.
Because look, I mean, I'll read this. This is from my book. I talk about this. I said, excuse me. But what about Cooper actually losing his life in the jump? Despite the darkness and the less than ideal weather, his odds of perishing were still quite low. According to the USPA's fatality index rate, there were only 3.2 fatalities per 100,000 skydives in 1970, or around 0.0032%. Of course, the average skydive doesn't take place at night amidst light rain showers from the back of a 727. But even if one were to suggest that Cooper's jump was 20 times more dangerous than the average skydive, that still leaves him with a 99.936% chance of survival. So there's that. Okay. So we have this insane, we have a 99.936% chance of survival. If it's 20 times worse than the average skydive. Okay. Then what are the odds of a parachute malfunction? I mean, astronomical. Okay. Then what are the odds that in a county of, I mean, he's splatting down in a county with a 1970 population of 130,000 people, with a current population of 500,000 people, 10 miles away from a metropolis, okay? And nothing is found in 50 years. Like, and I'm not saying, look, his body would have been torn asunder. No doubt, as I've said a million times, during the search in 72, in November 72, they found the body of 16-year-old James Annis, who had gone missing. He fell or something and died hunting. Tragic. But all they ever found of him, he had been missing for a year, was like a femur and like some ribs. And they didn't find a skull, nothing. And they found like his rifle laying there. Just torn asunder completely. But Cooper had a freaking, a parachute and strapped to him. It has hooks and things and, gadgets. And he had, whatever was in the mystery bag, goggles and things that, and he had, 90 feet of nylon shroud line that is not going to disintegrate. Like, where's that stuff? He said, well, maybe he bore into a hole in a crevice. And okay. But again, what's the probability of that?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? It's like at a certain point,
yes,
it's okay to just say he got away with it. And just, or just that again, the only FBI agent who I've ever talked to, or I've even read about, because even the guys who have died, Tom Manning, who did who led all the ground searches, Charlie Farrell was the first Norjack agent. They're dead, but we can read their internal memos. They think he lived. In fact, Tom Manning, I believe Chrissy, who's watching, asked me today. She said, "Why were there no further ground searches after 73? Like what, especially now that we know that he jumped, or we feel that he jumped. I mean, even look, I mean, the FBI, I mean, which is, you know, that people don't realize, and this is something that this is frustrating, that they're like the FBI, if you were to talk to the FBI now and say, where do you think Cooper jumped? They would say, we think around Orchards. We think he landed near Hawkinson, because that was literally what Larry Carr and them decided in around 07, 08. They said, okay, well, we think we were wrong. And all of us, most of us researchers now believe that too. Like, okay, well, he's jumped further south, just for various reasons. But so she was like, well, why did they never search those areas? Whatever, yada. Well, and I had to respond, look, it's resource allocation. I mean, it's nobody died. There's nobody. As a former prosecutor, I know that like the cases where somebody's going to be outside my office,
yes,
no justice,
yes,
no peace,
yes,
are the ones I focus on.
right.
I mean, you know, as a DA, you know, we were elected officials, you know, and the things that were, I mean, a receiving stolen property case was way lower on my totem pole than a murder,
Sure,
or a rape or something. I mean, kidnapping. I mean, so, and for the FBI, it's the same way. I mean, this is embarrassing for them, but even they knew very early on that there was no evidence for them to. The problem with this case is and their frustration. The FBI's eternal frustration when you read the when you read the memos. I'm such a redneck in my voice. Their eternal frustrations in the internal memos are basically that we have nothing to be proactive on. We can't, like, there's no leads we can generate. So they had to literally wait for the phone to ring and hope that something broke, you know, and that's not a great way to investigate anything. Just hoping that somebody calls you.
I mean,
But she asked me,
solve that way, but that's not the way that if that call doesn't come, you got to do something else besides that.
Yeah, right. And so, so Chrissy was asking why they do searches. I said it was resource allocation. But then I sent her the memo where Tom Manning, in 73 goes, look, we should stop spending money. In a memo, it's in the files to the director of the FBI. Hoover died in 72, so it was whoever replaced Hoover. But he says, look, I would not ever recommend any more searches, because there's no indication that this man's parachute failed to open, is what he says. That's the closest you'll come to them saying he lived officially. They're saying there's no indication that his parachute failed to open, which is, again, if your parachute opens, you're going to live, generally. So they believed it. So why? And so it's interesting to see when, like, Larry was so gung-ho that Cooper died. I'm like, well, but I mean, why do you think that? And what are the odds of that? It's nil, really.
But I will say, and I don't agree that he died, but I can see them barking up 10,000 wrong trees and just be going like,
Screw
you know, that it becomes to where, like, that, you know, you got some pride in your investigation. You want to find this guy. It has to be really, after a while, you're just like, all right, we're going to say this because, or I'm going to think this because we're never going to solve this, or we're not finding anything. And I'm sure that's frustrating, but it's certainly not the only case, and not even the only big case where you just, I mean, in the Zodiac, there's 10,000 more pieces of evidence, not a clue. And so I get their frustration, but, you know, the old stupid, you know, absence of evidence is not evidence, you know, and, you know, there is a possibility that this, like, you know, Cooper was better. Cooper wasn't a knucklehead that told everybody. Cooper maybe not been Superman, but he might have been smart enough to keep his mouth shut and just do whatever. He could have died 5 years later or whatever. You know, the thing is, though, it is weird to me that there's nothing. Like, I feel like, you know, Tina Barr kind of screwed everything up a little bit. But if they had almost found a few things, it would almost be thinking that you could get a story out of that without anything. It's almost,
we're left to invent things is the problem.
It takes something to make to hide all that stuff or anything. You either got he splatted in the middle and nobody can find it, or
he took it away himself. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you know.
Yeah, and that's been it's funny when you try to, like, when you do the thing that I do, and that was when I made that podcast about where I was like, imagine yourself doing this, because I was trying to get in his headspace, and I was literally like just laying in bed or something. I don't know. But I was like laying there going, try to literally pretend you're Cooper, and what would you do? And again, if you're winging it, which he was, okay, so that's another thing about him too. I think he had some self-confidence in himself for sure. I mean, just to do this, he had some confidence. Okay.
Sure.
And to be able to wing it like that, it's pretty ballsy, but I think that he landed, if I had to guess, I think he landed and knew probably at a compass and knew approximately roughly where he was. I mean, he seemed to know the geography of the area. He just did. And even, I won't say that, but I mean, there's some stuff I'm keeping secret.
That's fine. That's fine.
I have some interviews with some people that.
What do you think about the idea that, and this is sort of backwards, but the idea that you're calmer when you have nothing to lose?
Well, okay, so again,
as opposed to the guy who went down the bottom of the stairs and then chickened out because he didn't want to die.
Yeah. Okay. So I always have to be guarded. So I would say that I know that Cooper Cooper repeatedly told Tina Mucklow, I have nothing to lose. I will die. And he was prepared to die. He said, I will not leave this plane alive. He said he told her he had nothing to lose. So, she believed him. I think that's why she got concerned sometimes for him. Just like, hey man, if you want to kill yourself, just don't take us with you, But I think you're right. Think about how many veterans. Okay, here's a great thing to think about. Okay, great. We have a lot of awareness now of suicides among military veterans, right? From Iraq, things like this. And that sort of stuff was not, that stuff had to have happened in Vietnam, surely. In fact, I remember there was a documentary years ago on HBO about military PTSD, maybe 20 years ago. And it opened up with a story of a Civil War veteran who just walked out in his front yard one day and shot himself. And because he had been at, whatever, he had wounded or something. And like, that's gone on from time and more, I know, it's funny, you go back to like the Spartans, when you read about like Herodotus or whoever wrote about the Spartans, they talk about how those guys were macho men. Obviously they were brave and whatever, but then when the battle was over, they understood, even then they understood that there was a decompression moment. That they said that the guy that the Spartans, sometimes, their hands were so tight on their swords, they couldn't release them for like hours, it said. And they were shaking in fear. Like they were just like traumatized after it was over. As soon as it's over, they just start having problems, because in the moment they're focused. And I know my dad's a veteran and, it's surprising how many veterans in the moment of battle are not scared or are able to be maybe they're scared, but they're compartmentalizing whatever they're afraid of because they're just focusing on, they've been trained well enough to just do a job. Okay. I need to,
yeah,
so,
well, that's what you do. You look at it through that lens. You don't look at it through, well, I mean, if you can, you look at it through a lens like, I just got a job to do. And so you kind of put it down that one lane instead of thinking about your wife and kids or whatever. You're like, I got a job to do. And more importantly, it'd be crazy. It'd be wild to know how important it is to protect your buddy and keep your buddy's respect and be there for the guy next to you. Like that is like literally 80% of being
military. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so the thing about what I was saying, the reason I brought up the PTSD is because think about all these guys who were suicidal. I think that clearly, I know that if you read McCoy's FBI files, which are out there, they're online, about 1,000 pages of them. He was suicidal. They mentioned his medical history, saying he had a history of suicidal ideations when he came back from Vietnam, and actually re-enlisted. And a lot of those guys would sometimes, they re-enlisted. Some of them probably re-enlisted almost maybe wanting to be killed. I don't know. I mean, why would you do that otherwise? And of course his wife threatened to divorce him. He wanted to go back. He wanted to go back for a third tour. And Karen said, I will leave you if you do that. And he was like, okay. So that's when he ended up going to school, and I think he got bored. I think McCoy was an adrenaline junkie anyway. He was a skydiver, but I mean, I can absolutely see, having studied LaPointe, Hetty, Billy Hurst, Francis Goodell, these copycats, these guys were suicidal. I mean, they were veterans who they were pathetic almost. Some of them are crying on the plane. I mean, so I think I think Cooper may have been suicidal.
I think,
or been behaving suicidally, I guess.
His age is weird to me in the sense that I don't think he was in Vietnam, but
no,
I think he's too far removed from it to be
still suffering PTSD. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
But he's not old enough where he's not 62 where you're broken down and hopeless. He's in this weird kind of middle, which is why I think that it was like a job loss or divorce or something, where it was something that he made him be himself, like that propped him up enough, like to kind of keep going. And then you take that away, and then it kind of starts spiraling down. It does like I don't know. Again, these are stereotypes or whatever. But you would think somebody that was really actively had PTSD would be kind of falling apart. This he doesn't seem to me that this guy would be having a drink and having a thing.
Yeah,
I think he's playing a role to be better than himself. I don't think he's even I don't think, Tina said he was an executive type. I don't believe that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at okay, so I remember I often tell the story about when I was interviewing McNally on stage at CooperCon. Bill Mitchell was sitting out there, and I kept looking over at Bill. Bill had a very interesting relationship with McNally the whole weekend. It was a dynamic. I mean, they sat next to each other for dinner one night. I mean, it was interesting, and they got along fine. But it was an interesting dynamic because, there's a guy. I mean, it was almost like Bill was confronting his nemesis in a way over these years, and was meeting his nemesis. And what I remember is the moment that I kept looking out at Bill on audience when I was doing this, and I asked McNally. I had all these Coopery questions to ask McNally because I wanted the audience to be like, oh, So it was like, and one of them was, why were you wearing a suit and tie? And McNally's like, well, I wanted to look like everybody. I wanted to blend in.
Yeah.
And he's, I was like, well, did you normally wear a suit and tie? No. And when I said, why were you wearing a suit and tie? And he said, to blend in. Bill Mitchell literally sat forward in his seat like this, and he was like, what? And I think he'd never just thought of that. He was like, oh my God, maybe the guy wasn't a boring old man in a suit. He was, I'm saying, maybe he was just pretending to be that way.
I mean, that's what I've always thought, but obviously, you can read all these things in different ways, but if you are of that era where it's Sinatra and, being the cool guy and, the Rat Pack and stuff. Yeah. That's what you are, sort of. You're the anti-hippie. You're the fucking anti-youth. You're just kind of, I'm going to pull this off this way. Doesn't mean that's what happened, but that's what it kind of seems to me.
Yeah.
And it's just in that criminal podcast that's Bob McNally, the lady asked him at the end if he regrets it, and I'm not going to give away the answer, but his answer is fascinating.
Mm. Well, I mean, it's like I remember laughing about, Bill Mitchell brought up at CooperCon. Bill got really emotional and almost started to cry on stage because people were talking about being a victimless crime and things like this.
Sure.
And Bill was like, well, no, for one thing, I still think about it. But then he looked at McNally and said, and this guy spent 38 years in prison because of this guy. And of course, everybody got kind of quiet, and Max, kind of lightens the mood by being like, "Well, if it wasn't that, it would have been something else,"
Right.
which is probably true. But
Well, think if you had been on they think if you missed a plane that crashed, like nothing happened to you, but you're gonna think about that.
It's survivor's guilt
forever.
in a way. Yeah.
Or he's just gonna be like, wow, I came this close. Or, and he's probably constantly, I mean, I'm sure there's a time where you're like, man, stop reminding me of this stuff. And then you finally maybe come to terms with it. But
I mean, I wondered to be current eventy. I mean, it makes me wonder. I mean, like, what is going through like Donald Trump's head really as a human being? You know what I'm saying? Like as a human being, like all of us. I mean, he's Donald Trump. He's this, but he's still a person. And like he was an inch from having his head literally taken off in front of the whole world. Like that, and not just being killed, but being murdered in front of the world. Like that's got to be, to a degree. He's a tough guy. He's going to say this, but I mean, as a human being, he's got to be horrified, and really frightened by that. So that's kind of like your point. And but so the thing about Cooper, okay, here's what frustrates some of my frustrations is that I can't get a beat on him because I don't know I don't know. The copycats are almost not illustrative in a way. They're almost not helpful.
Why?
Because he's better than they are. If you really study their hijackings, he handles himself way better than they do. Like he wasn't as sophisticated as.
Is this the 302s talking, or is this the myth that's been pounded into us talking?
I think it's the 302s. I would say that it's he's just better. I mean, I just want to say that I guess his composure is better. I suppose. I guess that's the main thing. He composed himself better. He behaved better. He didn't seem. He got flustered about the refueling. That's about it, really. I mean, pretty much. I mean, even like the knapsack, thing. Like, I don't know. Somebody mentioned earlier why Cooper was calm if he had Benzedrine on him, right? And what's kind of funny about that is that, so to the surprise of literally no one listening to this, I have horrifying ADHD, okay? Enormous amounts of it in my brain chemistry. And my whole life have been this way. And what's interesting is Adderall is literally amphetamine. The bottle says amphetamine, right? I can take Adderall and fall asleep on it. It calms me down. That's what it does, people who have ADHD. And that's how you know someone actually has attention deficit disorder, is that their brain chemistry is such that when they're given speed, it lowers them energy. So, and I've always thought that Cooper was a little ADHD in his personality, and Larry's been always been on that train. He's like, this guy had ADHD big time, because he does Cooper jumps around a lot from what he's focused on, like, or fixation on things. Okay, ADHD. Hey, I have a fixation on Cooper because of my ADHD. I mean, we fixate on things. Cooper fixated on that stupid bag. Like literally, that's frustrating. It's confounding. All I had to say was, hey, my plan was I wanted a knapsack because he was going to wear it in the front and put his parachute over it. When they didn't bring him the knapsack, he could have just said, hey, go get me a knapsack from some kid in the airport.
Is the simple answer that he was just like, I'm going to get this show on the road and I'm not waiting for anything else?
No, but it took him. But he spent over an hour on the money bag. Literally, I mean, it's crazy. So Tina says that so all it's just people listening. Here's some Coopery stuff. Let's see. So plane lands at 5:45. Tina brings the money aboard 5:50ish. Okay. Passengers are leaving 5:55. By 6, she is leaving to go get the parachutes. Okay. When she brings the second parachute, she brings the 2 backpacks first, 1 trip for each because they're heavy. Okay. She brings the second one, but when she brings the second one, Cooper yells at her and he says, hey, he goes, where are the D-rings on this? Now, Tina has no idea what a D-ring is. She just stares blankly at him. And he just like looks at her and just goes, whatever, and goes back and just ignores her and just whatever. And he tells her to go get the other parachutes, and And so by the time that she brought the parachutes back, okay, he had already, or no, I know what it was. She brought the 2 parachutes, the 2 smaller ones. She brought it on the same trip. She goes out to get the crew meals, okay, which is her next trip. Okay, when she comes back, he's already popped open one of the parachutes, and he's cutting shroud line, wrapping the bag. This is at 6:10. Okay, plane takes off 7:36. Cooper is still messing with the bag, she's saying. Okay, so that's over almost an hour and a half. This guy is MacGyvering this thing, which to me is pretty dubious, and why I think he probably lost the money, honestly. I think my belief is somehow the money got dislodged from him. McNally's a good template for that.
Why didn't they bring something with them that they could put 40 G's in? Why did they put all the money? I still don't understand why McNally did basically like a drag bag. Like I wouldn't let that thing out of my. I don't know.
He didn't.
Why I wouldn't let it out of my hands.
No, so actually, Max. I wish I had the visual here. Max McNally's his setup was actually really good if you think about it. So the way he did it, I wish I could find this picture to upload here. Max, let's see, where is it? Let me try to find this for people. Sorry, this is bad pod for people on the pod, but I'm trying to find this photo that Mac drew. I mean, I asked McNally a while back. I said, "Hey Mac, will you draw me a picture of the way you set your bag up and just text it to me?" And he did, and it's glorious. And I hope I can find I hope I can find it. Come on, where is it? There we go. Yeah, I got it. All right, everybody can see it. So here's what Mac drew. There we go. Mac Pirate 72, he wrote. This is Mark McNally's drawing. So what's interesting is if the Mac's bag, let me try to pull up a photo of his ransom bag so people can see what his actual like. Okay, here we go. Yeah, so we can't really see it, but here's a photo of his of the bag. You can see it was like a mail bag, okay, and it had this like this guy in this photo is holding it by the handle, okay.
Right.
What Mac did with that handle is he looped that handle through his belt. He took his belt off,
yeah, right,
and just looped it through his belt, which is pretty clever actually. It's not going anywhere unless your belt has snaps on it, which his did. He didn't think about it. If he'd had a normal belt like the rest of us wear, the money wouldn't have gone anywhere.
You do know it says twine there, right?
True. Now,
I mean, I'm putting 40 G's in my pants or something. I can't believe how many of these guys didn't put all the money in the bag. One of them even asked for 500, $2,000. So they said they could have $2,000. And like, I think it might be, I don't know if it was Max. Asked for $2,000 to have when he hits the ground, whatever. I'm like,
he wanted spending money.
Put $40,000 in your pockets.
What's interesting is Rob Hetty actually left $40,000 on the plane because Rob, when he hijacked, he was wearing a fishing vest, which is kind of clever. He was wearing a parachute and had a fishing vest over his. He was wearing a fishing vest, and he couldn't stuff all the money. He asked for $200,000. He could only fit $160,000 in his vest, so he left $40,000 on the plane, which is interesting. But here's just for people watching, just for random. This is a picture of Paul Cini for anybody who's wondering. That's Paul Cini in prison. He was a painter, but that's a good shot of him. So, but yeah, so there's Mac the pirate. I love his little hair there. It's kind of funny. But yeah, twine though, he did bring, instead of getting a rope, he brought twine, which is ridiculous.
If it existed back then, duct tape. I mean, I don't understand.
Regardless of the twine, the belt loop thing was actually pretty clever. I would think that was not a terrible idea. Just if his belt had held, it would have been good. Who is okay? Lisa. Aunt Lisa is asking who is on the screen with me. This is Robert Black. He is a Cooperite. Okay. He is a
medium Cooper.
A medium Cooperite. Yes. Not quite. So the thing is, I think that as we've discussed, that the main issue that frustrates people is that he can be lots of different people. Really, in the book, I describe him as almost like a Rorschach test. He can be whatever you think he can be. I mean, and you can, like, I mean, I can find evidence in the files that show that he had no idea what he was doing with parachutes. None. But then there's Tina Mucklow. I mean, well, then there's the packing cards. I had no idea what a packing card was until I got in the vortex. Okay. He knew what a packing card was. I mean, they're not easy to find at all. In fact, here, I'll do it. I'll show you.
So while you're doing that, I'll just say that one of the frustrating things is that watching people analyze these. I know that's all you have in this in the minimal amount of evidence, but these people analyzing these things in 40 different ways, and you seem like if you're going to solve a problem, that you would sort of do your best to kind of put it in one or two ways and go with that.
Because, yeah,
because you're just sort of moving. It's like that, that game where you move the pieces around and, and you just try to get them all and get basically the hole in the middle away. But it's wild to me how like, you're like, looking at this thing and finding 30 different things. And you're just like, I don't know if that's the best way to figure out who did this.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of confirmation bias as well. What the people approach the case with.
Sure.
But so what I was going to show people is, so let me leave my microphone up. My microphone up here so people can hear me. This is a NB6. This is what Cooper jumped with. This is a sage green, which is the color he had. Okay. And this is, so the packing card on this thing is not easy to find. You have to look behind this cushion here. It's right here. Okay. It's this little snap. Let me see if I can see it. There's a snap here that's snapped. Okay. Snap there, and you open this up and you reach inside there and you pull out these cards. Let me, that's not that one. Let's see. Here we go. So you pull out this card here, pull out this card and you look at it. And this one says, let's see. This one was packed April of 74 at Northwest Aerosports, Linden, Washington. Now, Cooper would have seen Earl Cossey on his Issaquah Sky Sports on his, which is, But so the fact is that, like, this thing is hidden behind the cushion. You have to pull down the cushion to find it. So Cooper was able to find that, and went to it right away. Okay. So, because Tina, if you listen to Tusaw, Tina says that he right away was looking at the packing cards. So, that's interesting. Okay. So also Tina says that she observed him putting it on like it was an everyday occurrence. Now, of course, as a lawyer, I would say objection. She has no prior knowledge of what it looks like to put on a parachute. How would she know how easy it is to put on a parachute or not? Right. So that's what we would say, but she still said it looked like he did it every day.
So I would agree with that. And I would also add that, when we saw one at CooperCon, you put that on like a backpack. And so you have it on, like, not fully on, but you put it on like that, like that's basically a backpack. So if you see someone just throw that on over their shoulders and start the process, you're like, that person knows what they're doing. Meanwhile, it's just two straps over your shoulders.
It's not a big deal.
No.
It's not as complicated as people think it is, and especially if you've done it before, even 20 years earlier. It's not. It's really not that complicated.
So when is Tina talking to Tusaw?
83-ish. So relatively soon. That's why.
Relatively soon?
Well, compared to now, compared to her HBO interviews 50 years later. You know what I'm saying?
I don't know if Eric's out there, but in the Ina Garner documentary, they have the two kids who saw the fake cops sitting in the car, reread their testimony. And it's also, Bill Mitchell did this as well. And it was probably, it wasn't 14 years or whatever. It was more time than that. And they looked at it and they're like, wow, I don't remember being this specific with my testimony. And there's been multiple times where, granted, it's been longer, where Bill's like, oh, I didn't say that. And you're like, no, it's actually in there.
Yeah.
So that's another look. This is a big can of worms, but the further you get away, these things get different and changed. And man, 10 years is a long time. How are you remembering details 10 years from now? Because you put details in your head.
Yeah. Well,
and that's why I like you going to the 302s, because you can see it in the moment. Even then, so like, again, this is a big can of worms. What is the percentage that even in the moment they get wrong?
Yep.
And then as the farther goes along, it gets even more wrong.
Well, it's like Radachek. If you listen to Bill Radachek's speech on YouTube, it's a 2-hour speech. It's good, but I love Bill Radachek, but I get the sense it's almost like he is professor emeritus at Big Fish University. A lot of times. Well, I told Scotty, we can't do that. And it's like, oh, did you really? Did you tell the 30-year veteran of Northwest Airlines who flew 62 missions in World War II? You told him that or like, I don't like, and it almost makes me wonder, for example, Bill says that, Scotty suggested that they leave Tina. And Bill's like, I don't think we should do that. And Scott goes, well, you're right. I think we should. And it's like, man, I don't know if a guy born in 1920s like, let's leave the babe back there and skedaddle. I don't think so. A guy who had daughters of his own at the time. I don't think so. I mean, but I do put more stock in Tusaw than anybody else post hijacking interviews, because it is the most recent. But like you said, I mean, again, Tusaw is describing he's interviewing Tina Mucklow about an event that happened in 2011, essentially, for us 13 years ago, whatever. So that's not crazy, but it's better than now. I mean,
I know, but I don't know how many people would disagree with this, but my guess is 5 years later, they couldn't have pointed out Cooper.
Well, no, that's a fact. I mean, no. We know that. I mean, that's in the files.
Right.
I mean, that's absolutely in the files. I wish I could pull it up. Maybe I can. But there's actually we've got, I'll try to find that while I'm talking, but we actually have Tina and Flo saying, let's see. Here we go. Right here. This is Flo in 1975, I think. Schaffner further noted it has been 5 years since the hijacking and that she seriously doubted whether or not she could identify the individual from photos, and that she would have to see him in person before making any kind of ID. That's 1976. Okay. And then, we've got Tina in 72 saying the hijacker's becoming foggy, and she's worried that she has seen the sketch so many times that she has started to, metamorphosize Cooper into the sketch even. And so, I don't know. It's like,
okay. So I don't need to finish. I can do this all night, but so you've done these really cool videos. Like you did the video about his eyes and everything.
Yeah.
So, and basically what you end up saying is that a lot of basically all of the, I don't want to say not the physical evidence, but the visual evidence, everything is just mumbo jumbo, right? I don't even think the sketch, I think if you held Cooper up against a sketch, you'd be like, I can see it, but I don't really know. And you're damn sure not finding Cooper with just a sketch.
I think
so my question is, if you don't have DNA, where are you going with this?
Okay,
not
so
you personally, I'm just as an investigation. If you don't have that, where are you going with this?
Nowhere. Honestly,
you can't be going nowhere. Everybody's always looking into stuff. Everybody's being secret about what they're looking into. So that's why I have a small hope that there's something in the 302s. There usually is.
Well, see, we don't have all the files. And again, there are these guys who,
right.
Okay, I talk about guys like Orville Lyons. I talk about him a lot. Orville Lyons is the guy who, when the FBI showed up in 1984 and said, hey, we're FBI agents, he goes, oh, is this about the hijacking? And they're like, what? Like, Orville Lyons checks a hell of a lot of boxes. Smoke jumper and loser, never married, never had kids. Looks like the sketch, smoked Raleighs. I mean, a lot of boxes checked. Had a injury to his leg from 71, and the agents were like, he goes, oh, I fell out of a tree in 71. Did you? You know, it's like, come on. And like, but a guy like that.
So why does the FBI go get off these guys?
Well, I don't know. And that's the thing. Sometimes, usually, it's because they showed a photo to the stews, and the stews say no. All right. So, but then,
wow,
that's pretty much it. For example, Langseth, Jason Langseth is a very good suspect. I mean, like, shockingly good. And they said it wasn't him because they saw a picture of him. But again, now the thing about Orville Lyons is he didn't come to their attention until 84. So if they're going to dismiss a guy in 84 for not looking like on a photo ID, I don't buy that at all. That's not enough for me in the 80s to, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't. I mean, now at 71, the guys they were showing in 71, 72, maybe. And again, the thing about Cooper too, there is I'm like a broken record, but like you are intellectually dishonest or stupid if you read all the 302s and come away thinking that Cooper did not have a thin little nose, something jacked up with his lower lip, and a long face. Like that is boom, boom, boom. Constantly, like I'm talking like every single time they show a photo to these women, they're saying his nose is too big. Cooper had a little bitty nose. I mean, it's like 100 times in the files. So like that's why, I mean, my God, I love Ted Braden, but the guy doesn't have a skinny little nose. Okay, I mean, they would have looked at Ted and said, "Hell no." Like, I mean, McCoy's nose, people. McCoy's nose was way too big according to them. McCoy did not have a big nose. I mean, I don't think he did. I mean, I don't think McCoy's nose is that. Let's pull up a headshot of McCoy. I don't think that Richard McCoy.
While you're looking at that, I'm gonna have a really dumb Cooper layman's question. Why can't we look at mugshots from back then?
Well, we can. I mean, I FOIA'd some. I mean, for example, I actually just got me pulled up here. I actually got it's in my suspects right here. So one of the guys that they liked a lot was Alan Cooper. Okay. But talking about the nose, here's the mug. This is the actual photo that they showed them because I can FOIA these photos now from certain police departments. So like Alan Cooper was arrested by the Albuquerque Police Department, and they used the Albuquerque 1970 or whenever it was mugshot. They even says it in the FBI files that they showed her. So this is actually a response to this photo that I FOIA'd and got from the Albuquerque Police Department after 2 years. They finally got it to me. But there we go. So this is Alice Hancock saying that this is the exact photo that she's looking at. She said Albuquerque's nose was too handsome. Also, unknown subject's nose was narrower. Well, Alan Cooper's nose doesn't look very wide in that picture, does it?
No, and he's got that little drip on his nose that even kind of makes it look even more narrow.
Yeah, and so she's saying this. So Cooper's nose was narrower than that. So, like, and also, there's one that I have a FOIA out for now, where Tina Mucklow in 74 sees a mugshot and says, "No, that guy's not Cooper, but Cooper's lip looked just like that guy." So I'm like, "Well, shit, I need to get that mugshot," and I've been FOIAing for that. So the point is. And let's look at. I mean, look at. I bring up this a lot.
All right, I have another dumb question.
Yes,
Mr. Lawyer.
I'm getting worked up. Go ahead.
No, good. I'm
getting my dander up.
How come I can go look up some celebrity's mugshot right now, but you got a FOIA one from 70 something?
Because they have to go find it. They have to go dig it out.
Oh, okay.
So like it's in their archives essentially. So I can't walk into the Albuquerque Police Department and go, find the file folder myself. I have to ask them permission because they're still law enforcement. So that's why. So, okay, here, McCoy, here we go. McCoy's nose is not like enormous looking in that photo. I mean, but they said McCoy's nose was wider than Cooper's. So it's not huge.
So as someone who was called wingnut when they were in the Marines, because their ears stuck out.
Yeah.
Any suspect that ears stick out, even just a little out, forget about it. forget about it. And even one of the things that the stewardesses say, no, his ears didn't stick out that much, and the ears didn't stick out at all. Like, forget it. Weber out. McCoy out.
Well, I mean, they even say that in about McCoy. They even say that he. Let me see if this one is the one that I have it. This might be the 302 here. Yeah, there we go. So some of the differences in physical characteristics that were noted were that McCoy's ears stuck out further from his head than those of Cooper. Cooper's hair was fuller than that of McCoy's. McCoy's nose was broader than that of Cooper. And Florence Schaffner, the only stewardess who saw Cooper without his glasses, stated that Cooper's eyes were brown. She noted from the photograph of McCoy, his eyes were blue.
Is armed and dangerous? I mean, that's describing McCoy.
Yeah, they always, on every 302 at the bottom, they say armed and dangerous, just because the perp used a bomb, allegedly. So it's just the way it is. But like, for example, here, I'll show the photo of the guy who I found. This is the guy who, I won't say his name, but you can look it up yourself for people. I'm trying to encourage people to look at the 302s themselves. But this is the guy who they found, who had the, well, you can't really tell in this photograph, but this is one of his yearbook photos from high school. This is the guy who they said, look, this is the guy who was fidgety and wouldn't look at the sketch, who was the Boeing guy. He has the right head shape, all that stuff. I bring up this a lot too, that we have three guys, or about four guys who the stewardesses saw their photographs and said, hey, that guy looks like Cooper because of XYZ, right? And those guys, let's see, let me find that. Oh gosh, sorry, folks. Good pod. Where is it? I thought I had it right here. But basically, it's John List was one of them too, by the way. They liked John List's nose. Let me find that. I know I have that one where John List is. Here we go. So this is Robert Gregory looking at John List's photo. He says, Mr. Gregory did not definitely identify List as the subject of this case, but remarked that he bears a strong resemblance to the subject, especially in the areas of the hairline, nose, and lips. See, John List has that fat lower lip. He has a skinny little nose, and his hairline is receding, right? These are constants with Cooper, okay? These are things that come up repeatedly, okay? So if you have a wide nose, you're not Cooper. I mean, right. And it just, and also look, there's no way that when Florence Schaffner made that sketch in 1989 for Unsolved Mysteries, there's no way, if she's telling them that she can't remember his face in 76, no way. But if we look at that sketch, though, let me pull that up. Let me pull up the Dracula sketch, I call it. If we pull up the Dracula sketch that Flo made, a couple things pop out at you, though. Okay, let's. This is the one I colorized it, but here's the colorization of Dracula sketch. But look, okay, you've seen the weird lower lip, right? Weird lower lip, long face, narrow nose, right? Okay, so these are things that she remembered. She remembered features that he had. She didn't remember his face.
He's got more than a turkey gobble going there.
Well, you can't. Yeah, but so like the thing is though, that 17, 18 years later, she remembers features.
Right.
Okay. She remembers the lip being weird. She remembers a narrow nose and a long face. Okay. And let's look at the face. Let's look at the face that Alice Hancock chose. Alice Hancock said that this guy's head looked like Cooper's head. Okay. This is the guy who looks like Butthead from Beavis and Butthead. Right. So like, this is the head shape that a day later, Alice Hancock said looked like Cooper's head shape. Right. Well, I mean, look at the head shape of Dracula. It's got a long, it's kind of, it's higher above and skinnier below. Kind of the same thing, right?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, you see what I'm saying? Like he has features that are consistent. So that for me, if I see a suspect with a big nose, or even a nose like mine, I'm going to say no. I don't think I have a huge nose, but I mean, I'm wider than what they would say, right? Cooper needs to have some kind of weird, here we go, right here. This is the one that I FOIA'd, okay? This is the suspect. Let me put it up. So Miss Mucklow advised that Hartley's lower lip, as displayed in LA photo, yada, yada, is similar to that of unsubs, okay? So like I have FOIA'd for LAPD this photograph because I want to see what this lower lip looks like, right?
All right.
Because here we are. I mean, so if Cooper's lip is not thick, then I don't see it. You know, I don't think your guy can be Cooper if he doesn't have some weird oddity with his lower lip.
All right. Can I be the asshole in the room?
Please.
All you're describing, I mean, is none of the known suspects. All of the things that you kind of like are really sure about are none of the known suspects. If we take away the ears and the nose and
Yeah.
I'm just that's why I think that
Yeah.
we've never
I know what you're
seen
saying.
Cooper. I don't think we've ever seen a picture of Cooper before.
No.
At least like not that we know of for sure. But it's frustrating to me that all this still stuff stays in the what you call a zeitgeist or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
when you go to the page, you see the same things. Like it should be like Christensen should be out, gone.
Oh yeah.
Like, why is it even listed anywhere?
Well, like there's always something that disqualifies them. Like, for example, I love Dr. James Roman, the mad doctor who had killed himself, you know, and his wife a week before Tina Bar money was found. That guy. But look at his ears though; they stick out. But look at it. But see, his nose works, right? His head shape works. His lip works.
His ear sticks out. Doesn't matter.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. So you have with him, it's like, ooh, his nose, his lips look great, his head shape, but his ears, right? As much as I, for example, where is he? As much as I like Skip Hall, Packer, if you're watching, his ears stick out. Okay, he's got the nose. I think he's got the weird lip thing going on, but like, I think his ears stick out a little much. Okay, which is a disqualifier. I mean, you know, obviously, you know, let's look at Gossett. Okay, Gossett's nose is too big. Look at that nose.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? That nose that's a beak. Okay, that doesn't work. Okay, so obviously Weber has the big. You know, the stupid ears, you know, let's look at Dwayne here for people who don't know what Dwayne Weber looks like. There's Dwayne with his ears, giant ears, right? I mean, just doesn't work.
That picture doesn't even do his ears justice. How big?
No, his mugshot is the one that does the justice. You know, who else? You know, here we go. You know, my dude. I love Teddy B, but Teddy B, that nose is too big for me. And I don't see it. I mean, I know Drew's got a photo where he thinks his lips stick out, but I mean, those lips look thin to me.
Yeah,
look thin, not even remotely. I mean,
he had a couple other photos. I was like, okay, wow, that's more interesting than that photo. But
that's the clearest one we have of him.
That's which of these suspects were before 75?
Good question. Legitimate suspects. Catalano, who, let's look at his photo real quick. Fred Catalano is a unresolved. He's not been eliminated by the FBI. That's Fred Catalano. Not a very clear picture of him, but he does have the long head shape. I can't really tell about his nose. It's kind of a bad photo, and he's older in this photo too. But Langseth, who the only photo we have of Langseth, I have FOIA photos. This is the only photo we have of Jason Langseth, and it's when he's in college, so he's a lot younger. There he is. But I mean, Langseth is his lip is heavier, lower. His nose looks a little thin there. Langseth is good. But Langseth is pre-75. Sheridan Peterson is, you know, suspect number 112, for example, is Peterson. But Peterson's bald. I mean, for example, here we go. Let's look at Petey. This is Petey's passport photo from 1970. He's bald. I mean, he's got a good nose. His ears don't stick out. His lip looks good.
They said he had more hair than McCoy.
Exactly. So like, you know, and then well, he was wearing a toupee. Well, but Cooper was balding. Are there toupees that make you look balding? I don't think so. So who else? Kofelt is, so Kofelt was, here's one. Kofelt was liked. Allegedly Flo ID'd Kofelt. Allegedly. I'd love to talk to Flo about that.
Weirdly, he looks too handsome. If you're going to use the ladies' terms, like that other guy.
I don't know. He's got little big ladies. I mean, ladies watching, do you think Jack the Cofelt looks handsome in this photo? But
well, that one photo you showed earlier, they said he wasn't that handsome. I didn't think that guy was that great either. But I mean,
right. And so, but let's just see. But so this is what Flo said about Jack Cofelt. This photograph is actually this, but this is the photograph that was shown. Actually, she said. She recalled that the hijacker had darker skin, a receding hairline with thin black hair. After looking at the photos, she could not tell if the man in the photograph was really Cooper. She says the man in the photograph had the hairline of Cooper, had the thinning hair, has the ears look good, the nose and the long face of Cooper. But she says this guy had fatter cheeks than Cooper. So,
wow.
I mean, yeah, wow. It's like, so Cooper had to have this weird sort of
but not as Dracula-y, because you show that young kid that had the kind of weird looking hair, but he had that thing going on where it kind of like, and then kind of up like this, like has like the older version of that.
Well, I mean, let's look at the Bing sketch, folks.
Which,
I mean,
that is nothing what they're describing.
I disagree. He's got a long face.
I don't know who's saying who, but how do you say the kid with the squared off hair looks like has the hair?
No. That's just head shape. Okay. So like, yeah. So this dude was just for head shape. Okay. Not a mugshot. It's just, that's the misnomer, is that the mugshot. No, it's just the head shape. Okay. And nothing else. See, in the current FBI facial ID catalog, their other features are blurred out. It's just what they're in that specific. So, for example, that guy was in the head shape category of 100 head shapes.
He paid $5 to get his head shaped for that.
Yeah, and in fact, this is actually, I'll show the people what I'm talking about here. Is this is for example, here we go. Eyes in the FBI book, you'll see eyes. Okay, so like, in the modern FBI book, everything is blurred out except for these people's eyes, right? So it's, but this is the book that they chose from, okay? We can see the head shape, for example, right here. This thing of the head shape right here. Right there, KA, there's one right there. I'll bring it up here. This is the head shape that Robert Gregory chose, okay? For Cooper, which is this long kind of face, right? See how that head shape is long?
Yeah.
That's what Robert Gregory picked out the day after he saw Cooper. So, I mean, if your guy doesn't have this long head, I mean,
brain's more roundish, it seems like.
Yeah, it's a problem. And when we look at the thing I want to find here, the thing I really want to find for people to show them is this. Okay, so these four people were picked out as looking like Cooper. Okay, these four people right here. Let me pull it up. This is, okay, so that's, who's had features of Cooper. That's Cofelt. Then that's Donald Sylvester Murphy in the hat there. Catalano with some hair dye that I put in his hair. I photoshopped some hair dye. And then List, okay? So, I mean, these guys kind of have this, sort of similar-ish, kind of longish heads sort of kind of thing going on. So it's, that's where we go from there. Like like, I don't know any of the suspects. They all have something that doesn't fit really. And that's a frustration, really. Because I would love to buy in. My God, I would love to buy into Ted Braden. But it's frustrating to me because I'm probably number 2 in the world for like advancing Ted Braden into the vortex. But I can't buy all in because I don't think that nose fits with what the 302s say, right?
I don't understand how you can square. If you believe in the tie, you can't. There's no way. I saw what Breeson said, but you can't square the tie with Braden. You just can't.
Yeah,
he wasn't getting out, pushed back to the States in 71, but he had a tie laying around from all that time he was in the military. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's Yeah, you're right. I mean,
You're in the military, you're not going around wearing civilian ties very often.
no, definitely not. And he mentioned somebody's mentioning Rekka. Well, I don't want to get. I mean, Rekka is such a pathetic suspect. I don't even consider him a real suspect. And okay, so here's somebody, Melvin Wilson, who actually it's always been kind of a dark horse of mine, Melvin Wilson. But Melvin Wilson, his head's a little too round, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think he has a long head. There,
I think all these ones that don't have that older guy look, I think it seems like they, and Bill Mitchell talks about it. Well, he's got that kind of saggy older lad look, not totally, but some of these guys have like hard faces, and you're like, I don't know if that's what they're describing. They're not describing these chiseled hard faces.
Okay, so there is one suspect who I think LD Cooper at least fits everything we want. I don't know, the lip's a little thin there, but his nose is thinnish, it's kind of bulbous at the end, but it's kind of thinnish at the top. His ears don't stick out. He's the right color for sure. He's olive for sure. So LD's good. Now Schaffner said that LD in 2010, Schaffner said that LD was the closest photo she'd ever seen to Cooper. Now that's, what is that? Almost 40 years later. But, that's why the FBI said he's the most promising suspect yet, is because Flo said he looked more like Cooper than anything she had seen. It's while we're on it. Here's Dick Lepsy. Yeah, Dick Lepsy's not, unless Dick Lepsy lost some weight, he's a little too chubby in the face there. Lepsy's got a good skin tone. I mean, he definitely has olive skin, you would say that. But Lepsy doesn't work. None of these guys.
So if you go by how I think evidence is not great, especially if you go by my theory of like, as we go, this goes a long way and we fill in these gaps, and in the end, none of it's right. If we go by that, Cooper's not going to look like a lot of what Cooper should look like. There is a chance that Cooper is none of the above. We do not, right? We do know that, I think it was Chris Cunningham was talking about the sketches of the Delphi murder and stuff like that. There is a chance that Cooper, except for his actions, is like none of the above. Never in the military. Yeah, I get stuck that he probably has brown eyes, but it could be where there's a chance that we find Cooper and we're like, God damn, this is not like anything we were looking for.
So Andrade is the one who kind of coined the term. Andrade always says that when we find Cooper, he's only going to be 80% of what we think physically.
I would take the under.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, so here's, I guess, some breaking news. I don't know if it's breaking news, but so I received the FOIAs for Melvin Fisher, the copycat, just last week from the FBI. I got a big CD. They still send you CDs, the FBI. So I got a CD of a FOIA, about 400 pages on Melvin Fisher's hijacking. He hijacked a plane outside Oklahoma City, got $200,000, and basically was sat on the stairs for about an hour and then just surrendered, got scared, didn't jump. So Melvin Fisher was 49 years old. So, but here's the kicker. Melvin Fisher was very apparent to all the passengers. He was pacing up and down the aisles. There are, I believe, let me make sure. 45. There are 45 witness descriptions of this guy. That's a good sample size, right? We have 10 for Cooper. We have 45 to measure, like 45 before they knew who he was. These are passengers off the plane being interviewed, right? So we can use that to compare what the accurate was, right? So I determined that, let me pull it up here. I did some math on it because I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out how many of these people got his height right and, things like that. So let me see. I wrote it down. Let me pull it up here. All right. Let's see. It's going to be right here. Okay. So there are 41 witnesses. So 41 witnesses gave a height description of Melvin Fisher. Melvin Fisher was 6'3.5", kind of a tall guy, right? So of the 41 Fisher witnesses who gave a height description, 23 came within 1 inch. and 32 of the 41 came within 2 inches. All right. So that's not bad.
No, not bad at all.
Not bad at all. Okay.
No.
So 32 of 41 come within 2 inches. So if he's 6'3", that means that at least 32 of the 41 said 6'1". No, I mean, none of them went higher than that, of course.
Sure.
But so they came within 2 inches. So to me, we're talking about height. It's another knock on Ted Braden. He's 5'8". I mean, the people who saw him standing, all of them at least said 6 feet tall. Okay. So Tina says 6 feet tall. Flo said 6 feet tall. Alice says 6'1". Hal Williams, a man who came face to face with him, said 6'1" plus. Okay. Now we can make
where did the 5'10" come from?
Well, so Tina's very first 302 says 5'10" to 6 feet tall. Okay. Then the passengers who never saw him standing, I think Bill Mitchell says 5'9" to 5'10". Robert Gregory says 5'9". Spreckle says 5'10", but they never saw him standing. I mean, it's almost like irrelevant to me, really.
Right.
So the fact is, I think about this: men are good at, maybe it's caveman biology stuff, that men are very good at sizing up other men, I think.
Really?
I think
it'd be the opposite.
You think
Women
so?
are so stuck on height.
Well, I would just say that, but think about this. I mean, bottom line is, you know how tall you are. Okay. So when you come face to face with somebody, I know if they're taller than me or not.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. And I can roughly say how tall they are. So for Hal Williams to say he was 6'1" plus says something to me.
Well, yeah, because you're standing eye to eye, you're face to face with this guy.
And he did.
I should be good at height guessing if I'm like right at you.
And he was. I mean, he was the gate agent. Cooper walked up to him and handed him his ticket. And Hal had been watching him for the previous 10, 15 minutes because he was like, this guy's kind of weird. Okay. And also Hal said he was 50 years old. All right. Hal Williams was 40 years old at the time. I'm 42. Okay. I would have a hard time pegging somebody as 52 who's actually in their 30s, who's younger than me. That's not realistic to me.
Yeah, I don't believe so either.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, so I do think Cooper is not in his 30s, okay, or younger than that. Just because Hal Williams, a 42-year-old came face to face with a guy and estimated he was 10 years older than him. And again, if we look, what's interesting about it is that the FBI said that their best guess was 48 years old for Cooper. Okay. Melvin Fisher's 49. Heineman's 49. Okay. And they were moderately calm. Heineman was kind of a jerk at points, but my favorite story about Heineman is that Heineman, and this is another thing where it's like, Flyjack, if you're watching, I love you, guy. You're a great researcher, but Heineman's not Cooper. Okay. Heineman made the passengers leave via the aft stairs. Okay. And he's in the back row. Okay. Heineman, is mean mugging them as they go by. Right. I'm saying? Like, but what's funny about it is that one of the passengers said that he gave Heineman a thumbs up as he exited. Like, you go, guy. And the Heineman was like, give him a thumbs up back or something. So it's like, I love that story. But I mean, Heineman is this middle-aged loser kind of guy. Fisher's this middle-aged loser kind of guy. If Cooper's that age, then maybe he's more of the middle-aged loser than the criminal. And look, I mean, my age, I'm 42, you're in your 50s. At a certain point, your give a damn button kind of falls off sometimes, And I think that, I think you froze there, Robert. Did you freeze? Did we lose Robert? I think we lost Robert. He's frozen. Okay.
Oh, really?
And
you're frozen on my end. Oh.
Okay. Are you there? You're good? Okay. So did you hear me when I was saying that?
Yeah. I heard you. Gotcha.
Our give a damn button kind of wears off the older you get, I think. And so to me, I look at guys like Hetty, LaPointe, McCoy. The younger guys were more aggressive.
Sure.
And nervous, and they had their lives to live. And, I think you're almost resigned to who you are by the time you're in your 50s or in your 40s. You're kind of just who you are. I am who I am. I'm 42. I'm like, I'm not going to change. And
especially back in 71, it's pretty hard to reinvent yourself at 50 or 48.
Yeah, that's a modern thing. This kind of thing we have going on. Men were mature types back then. People matured quicker back then. Because a lot of these guys were in the military, period. When they got, you were 17 when you got in the military. I'm sure you grew up a lot when you joined the Marine Corps.
Yeah.
Out of high school, so I do think Cooper's height is legitimate. I do think he was taller than normal because we have all four people who saw him standing said 6 feet. And so, and now we have this evidence of Melvin Fisher, 32 of 41 getting within 2 inches at least. So, not bad. And as far as his age goes, I think that, let's see. Oh man, I had it somewhere, but yeah, they almost all got his age right within about 5 years. All the passengers, they all said mid to late 40s. Some said 50s, and he was 49. So, they weren't too far off.
No.
So I don't think our descriptions I don't think our general, and that was one of the issues I had with Eric, with guys like Vince Peterson. I'm like, what on the official description does this guy match? Like nothing. So how is he even possibly a suspect if he doesn't have anything in common with this guy? I don't see it,
So another dumb question. Look, I know investigating stuff is hard. It seems so broad sometimes, and I'm like, and I know profiling is what it is, whatever, but why wasn't there sort of this? So it's been 50 years. We might as well frickin' try anything.
Yeah.
Why don't we like 6 to 6, 180 or 160, 180, whatever the range is, and this is what we're gonna look for, and we're gonna throw on wide net and look for this. We're gonna have this really narrow parameter. You're 5'9", out. You might not find the person, but I don't understand this wide range and wide net that's still being thrown about everything from he can be a pilot to this, to this, to this. And I don't know how you look for something that's so
broad. Yeah, it's broad.
Yeah, it's really broad.
Yeah, and that's why, like I said, that's why I latch on to those visual things, the nose and the lip, and because those are so consistent over decades. Like I said, the Unsolved Mystery Sketch 20 years later has the same shit. That tells me something, right? So, and the fact that they eliminated people based on it is.
If you got all the 302 suspect files,
yeah,
can you sort of, and you're uploading it so you can search through them?
Yeah.
Can you just enter all this, and will you have enough information? You're you know what? This is what I'm going to enter. I'm going to filter out 300 guys who fit this description. Is it possible to do that, or do you got to look through all that manually, or they redact so much that you can't even search that quickly through the 302s?
No, I could type in 6 feet tall, and everybody who is listed as 6 feet tall would pop up. Yeah, I can do that. I have that capacity on my Adobe thing I use. So yeah, and that's why I like guys like Orville Lyons and this new guy because they're the right height, the right size, and I look them up personally, and I look up their photos on Ancestry or whatever. I'm like, okay, he's got what we want. If he didn't, he's gone. I wouldn't care. But I care about guys like Orville Lyons and this new guy because they check all these damn boxes. Why would somebody 13 years later tell the FBI, are you guys here about the hijacking? Where were they? And what's funny about that is those agents wrote back to Seattle going, this son of a bitch brought it up before we did. They were shocked. They were like, oh my God. Or the fact that this new guy in the files recently, the Boeing guy, said he never heard of the hijacking. He goes, oh, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this is. But then he starts talking about. But then before they bring it up, and this is in the 302, they say he denied ever hearing about the hijacking. But then later on in the interview, he starts talking about the hijacker jumping off the aft stairs, the rear stairs, and they're like. So he said he didn't know what this even was, and then he brings up jumping off. Whoever this guy was jumping off the rear stairs. You know what I'm saying? That bothered them. Like, this is inconsistent behavior. Like, you're lying to us. You know, what are you hiding?
Yeah, but I always go back to, if you're doing an investigation, you're interviewing creeps and weirdos. So, like, you see that with the Zodiac all the time. They interview these guys and they're like, just kind of like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, they're all, they're all
these are
mouthing
things that you should draw your attention, should look into. I just kind of like, it's funny how you seem to, I seem to actually, you're going through all this data and I feel like more beaten down than you are. You feel like more optimistic than I am. And I'm like,
well, I guess it's because I see guys, it almost invigorates me when I see guys in the files who fit. Because I'm like, okay, there are people who fit this guy to a T. So one of these guys is going to be Cooper eventually. I mean, and you know, it's interesting. Drew says, yeah, Drew brings up Braden's eyes were hazel because somebody said that they would. Somebody said, yeah, and so that's a good point, Drew. Yeah, I don't eliminate. The only eliminations I'll do on eye color are like blue, like bright blue, you know, like Vince Peterson eyes or Sheridan Peterson eyes.
No, someone had a hazel, like, no way. Like, that's not, no way. Like you said before, it's dark in there. It's got no way. Like,
yeah, I mean, Jude, I remember I tell the story a lot at CooperCon. We were having dinner or something, and Jude was like, hey, everybody, what color are my eyes? And everybody was like, looked at him, I mean, they look brown. I was like, and then I tried to remember what Jude looked like in the daytime. I'm like, shit, can I remember a friend of mine's eye color, right? I have a hard time. I was like, I think your eyes are brown. Well, his eyes are like really green, actually. But in lower lighting, they look dark. I mean, my eyes are hazel, actually. And my eyes can look, in like where we have good lighting, they kind of look a little bluish. But like in low lighting, they look brown as shit. So like your eyes look brown right now. What color are your eyes?
Kind of hazel.
Yeah, right. So your room isn't as bright as mine is. So they look brown to me. And
I mean, that's what I thought your eye video was really good. Like, yeah, like
there's
okay,
no
we
chance.
we kind of lean in this direction, but we can't exclude everything.
No, and they even, and it makes me kind of upsets me because well, the FBI never eliminated somebody on eye color. Never. So we shouldn't either. You know, I mean, that's something, you know, that like if I see a suspect who has green eyes in the files, I'm like, okay. Even like blue eyes sometimes. For example, I know Melvin Wilson. Okay, so Vicky Wilson's around. You know, Vicky, if you're watching, hello. She watches these. You know, Vicky. You know, couldn't. Her dad disappeared when she was about 7 or 8. Okay, she doesn't really remember a lot physically. And she asked her mom. She said, "What color were his eyes?" She said, "I know his eyes are listed as blue." And her mom said, "Your dad's eyes were so blue, so that they looked black." She said that they were so deep, they were so dark blue that they looked black. Wow. He had like black eyes almost. You know, so she said, and I can see it. There's a couple of color photos of him, and they're very like black looking. It's kind of strange color eyes. But yeah, the eyes, yeah, I mean, like I said, we cannot trust Cooper's eyes. Like these eyes here, I mean, the Bing eyes are so feminine looking too. Like I don't like them. That's why, and I will continue to contend because that I mean, it just is what it is, folks. I mean, I can be persuaded eventually, but again, I have no dog in this hunt that that the best sketch we have is Bing with the sunglasses, because this sketch was made 2 days later. This is the only sketch that was made with them. The Bing with the eyes is the only, Bing with the sunglasses, I'm saying, is the only Cooper sketch ever made where multiple witnesses were in the same room together with the guy who drew it. And it was 2 days later. So, I mean, okay, sketches can be funky, but I mean, that right there is, again, people can say, oh, his nose looks like a Michael Jackson nose, looks like an alien. Well, you know what? Roy Rose drew that nose. He didn't just fart that nose out of his brain. They told him to draw that nose, right? That's not Roy Rose's invention. They said, well, make his nose. And what's interesting, I actually found this recently. So we talk a lot about KK51. Because Flo says, oh, that sketch looks like, or this photograph looks like Cooper. And And so what's interesting about KK51 is if you stretch KK51 out, he looks like Bing. Let me show people, everybody. So KK51 is Bing, essentially. See? Like,
Right.
it's basically Bing with adjustments, because they must have said, hey, his nose is going to be narrower. You know,
Right.
KK51 was the template for which they drew Bing. Okay? Clearly, you can tell that, right? And so even like the lines that come down from the nose, the facial lines, those are the same, right? And really, that one is not even the best one. The one that I wish I could find, the one that I've been using recently to illustrate that KK51 and Bing are the same. I wish I could find that, but no. So again, we can laugh at Bing's nose all we want, but you know, Roy Rose didn't invent that weird nose, right? I mean, so
but when I look at that, like I try to picture it in my head, and it's just not the face of someone who's 6'1". It's just weird to me. It looks like almost. I mean, I know that's a kind of weird thing. How you're going to stretch that out, but like, just I don't know. The face looks super unique. Like you show the other ones, and like it doesn't really look like any of them. Like I don't know. It's because of the way there's no lines in the skin at all. It makes them. I think some of your enhanced ones I look at more and I go, okay, I can relate to that a person more. That one just hard to look like a person.
Yeah, I guess so. Let's see. I mean, so let me try to find the one that really is. Here we go. Yeah, this is the one. Okay, let me upload this, because see, that was an enhancement of mine a second ago. The problem with the enhancements is they lose some of the. When I do a CGI enhancement, they kind of lose a little bit of the original look to them. So here's the original one with his head tilted the right way. This is, you know, weird. Remember, people realize Bing's head, if you look at the Bing sketch in the papers, his head's tilted a little bit. And the reason his head's tilted is because KK51's head's tilted. Okay? So that's a really good illustration there of how similar they are.
That looks a little more realistic than the other one.
What, the Bing? Yeah, well, see, because this is AI, again, enhancing a little bit. But this is the original sketch right there, okay? So, but yeah, obviously they said, bring his ears in a little bit so they don't stick out as much, right? They said, the girls said, make his nose thinner. But everything else is, I mean, his head, it's KK51, basically. So, I mean, I know people don't like Bing, but again, Bing was created 2 days later by the same guy who made the Heinemann sketch, right? Which is, you know, as we've shown before, here we go. The Heinemann sketch is damn close. Same artist. I mean, that's not bad. You know, I mean, the hair looks, that's pretty close. Wouldn't you agree? It's close enough to be the same guy.
Except for it is weird that the sketch has a little bit of a widow's beak, and I don't think he really has much of one at all.
Heinemann. I'll show everybody. Today just today got Heinemann's a Heinemann mugshot. Check this out. I bought one. I bought an original. Here we go. Right there. Look at him. So that's a good shot of Heinemann there. That's probably
look at the sketch. The sketch kind of comes down and around a little bit, and he doesn't really have that.
Yeah. With the hair, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the hair is, I guess, a little off, but everything else is close. You know, I would say it's.
The facial.
He could be identified from that for sure.
Yes.
If you knew that guy.
Yes.
You know, but again,
which is why I don't think Cooper can.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is also this: is that like I know that there's a Cooper investigator in England, in the south of England, who brought this to my attention, that there was a case in England several years ago where a guy went a body was found on a Scottish moor. Okay, it's like a hill. It was a body that was found, and it was a guy in his 50s, and they had no idea who he was. And they put his, they were able to draw a very accurate drawing from his face. I mean, he's dead, but eyes open, things like that. And they put it in all the papers in Europe. Said, who is this person? You may know who this is. And years went by, and finally, the guy's family was like, "Oh, that's our whatever, right?" But it took them years, and they were looking for the guy. It was like their dad or whatever. He had gone missing, and so they just happened to miss when it was published. Right. So I mean, that's something else. I mean, the Bing sketch wasn't in the paper every damn day.
Right.
If you were on vacation in Mexico or something and missed the thing and missed the Bing sketch being in the paper, well, then you're not going to see that it looks like Tim down the street, or whatever. You're going to miss it. So, because it's not the internet. You have to actually see a physical sketch in the paper to know what this hijacker looked like, allegedly.
Right. I think it's weird it's hard for me, not saying it couldn't happen, it's hard for me to wrap our head around that a missing person of that sort of, it's everywhere. So that those two lanes wouldn't collide somehow.
Oh, a missing person looking like Cooper.
Yeah. 2 days afterwards.
Yeah. And I mean, people, like you said, people can disappear, but and that's why I think he lived, I guess. That's the main thing. It's an argument. That's an argument against him dying, is that if you die, there's gonna be tickets piling up on your car windshield wherever your car's left, right? You're gonna, your rent or whatever. What's interesting, and he's not Cooper, I don't think, but I'm not sworn to secrecy, but I'm not gonna give it away. But like, there was a guy who fits a lot of boxes, who the Portland Hilton last saw this guy the day before the hijacking, and he left all his stuff there. This guy ended up dying 5 days later in Denver, Colorado, of all places. So a guy dies in Denver, Colorado of a suicide. Okay. His family is contacted a month later by the Portland Hilton saying, "Hey, your son was in our hotel and we saw him November 23rd and he never came back. We have all his stuff. It's still in the room. And he's dead 5 days later." Now we're talking about a guy who could be Cooper, right? And you're like, okay, well, let's just say this guy got injured in the jump and was just skulked off back home, lost the money,
gotcha.
Whatever. So that's the only suspect who comes close to being in Portland. We can put him in Portland the day before, and then dies 5 days later. The guy I've been talking about, the Boeing guy who was scared of being poisoned, he dies in 1976. The paper doesn't disclose his manner of death. Suspect number one, Thomas Johnston, the guy who was the armed robber who took up skydiving at age 49 and moves from Arkansas to Portland the month before the hijacking, and then is arrested in the DZ at 2:00 in the afternoon in Woodland.
Yeah, you're talking about
like, what in the hell, right?
Right.
He dies 3 months later in Portland, undisclosed. Like, he's dead. It's like, and I mean, I'm going, was this guy Cooper's accomplice? Maybe. And he got drunk waiting for him in the DZ or waiting for him somewhere around there and got arrested for a DUI. He was arrested for DUI. That's how they eliminated him. Is they're like, shit, he's still in jail for a DUI. It can't be him.
Right.
But, that's okay. That's a frustration. We can wrap it up, but like, that's a frustration, is the damn coincidences, right? There's so many.
That's the thing. That's the thing. If you are a true crime fan and you follow all these cases, you find how many times cops or police go, this has to be him. This has to be the person because of this, and this. And then it turns out not to be the person. And every night in every city, or like, the whole Heisen like robbery.
Yeah, right.
It's a coincidence, but it happens all the time. Like, it's just, I know it's like, it's hard for the brain not to say like, wait a minute, these two things are happening, but it just happens.
Well, I mean, I've investigated there's coincidences that we've investigated. For example, you talk about the Heisen store. Okay. We know now that there were a string of burglaries that happened the same night. Just around there at another store, they broke into a store. a storage shed was broken into, a boat was stolen. And it turns out, upon further investigation, that it was like a bunch of like junkies who were living in Kalama, and they found all the crap they had stolen. Okay, a week or two later. Okay, or another one that I investigated, the mysterious small plane that was seen floating around, circling. Right. Well, I found out. I called the guy on the phone.
Right.
And he was like, "Oh yeah, that was me. I'd bought a clunker of a plane, and I had to circle above my personal airstrip in Woodland, waiting for my wife to turn her headlights on so I could land on our front yard." Like, but that's what it was, right? And that was in the In Search Of episode. That was part of the whole Rackstraw grift. Was this small plane? This was, and he's like, "That was me."
Right.
And McClellan, he even said that he watched that documentary. He was like, "Yeah, it was a documentary years ago." I was like, "Yeah, I saw that one, the Rackstraw one." He was like, "They were saying like," I told my wife, I was like, "That was me flying overhead," and they're saying that I picked up Rackstraw. Give me a break. So like, that's a coincidence, right?
Yeah.
And
because things happen every day, and then we have these unknown, and we want to attach these things to the unknown.
Yeah,
and it's understandable, but I don't like when people make the big leap.
Well, like the leap. One of the things that bugs me is Eric's thing. Because Eric, no offense to you, but like your logic skills sometimes, I'm curious. Like the fact is that like money is found on Tina Bar 9 years later, and you have to say that Cooper buried it there the night of the hijacking. It's 9 years later. Like, and I asked him, I said, "You're into the Gardner heist stuff?" He goes, "Yeah." I mean, obviously. I said, "So if in 1999, some of the paintings, shreds of the paintings were found in Springfield, Massachusetts, does that mean that the night of the burglary that those paintings were there?" Like, no, it doesn't. So just because the money's found in a bar doesn't mean Cooper was there. Like that again, like this is chapter 9. All we have is chapter 1, right? We're missing 8 chapters. So like, just because something doesn't make sense in chapter 9 doesn't mean you have to rewrite chapter 1 and change the flight path.
Well, that's always the frustrating part of mine, is that some things you don't have to solve everything. You don't have to if you have, "Hey, I think this is what happened." You don't have to bend over to fit everything. You can go, "This happened, this happened. You know what? This happened. I don't know what happened there. And you know what? In my story, it's cool. I don't have to explain it. This is what I think happened."
Yeah,
I mean, that's what Colbert's like trying to fit everything in. You're like, this is full of shit. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, it's okay to say you don't know.
Yeah.
And that's why I told Eric that on many of those lives. I'm like, "Eric, it's okay to say you don't know how it got there. I don't know. 9 years later, I mean, who the hell knows?" And what, flares. Okay, somebody's going to bring up the flares. Rob and I were talking before about this, and talking about how airplanes. Okay, the plane's flying at 10,000 feet. That's really high. Agreed? Like that's way higher than people think it is. Like a plane at 10,000 feet is not going to shake your house. Not at all. Oh, your volume is low. There you go. Good. You're good.
When that kind of all got bandied about, I Googled. God bless YouTube. You can like plane at 6,000 feet flying over, plane at 8,000 feet, and you can see that. And you can see, like, even at 6,000, the plane is pretty small, and at 8 to 10,000,
2 miles, 2 miles away. So when you have these people saying, like I said, I told you earlier, there's a 302 where some woman says that she swears she saw Cooper jump near the river because she saw him jump out. And it's like, I can't even see somebody 2 miles away, much less in the dark, right? Or this business about Cooper dropping flares. Why the hell would he do that? He's trying to he's trying to obscure his location, not be dropping flares.
It's just the gap filling that goes on that I think is kind of unnecessary. He doesn't have to. You can think that he had an accomplice without having a radio. Like you can think, all right, he had an accomplice, and it might have gone off the rails, but throw in the radio or throw in, he had a flashlight with him for whatever you want to throw in. You're like, you don't have to do that.
just say, I think I had accomplice, but it didn't, there's no communication. There's no way that he communicated with somebody on the ground. Just in a story.
Yeah. All you have to do, I've said this a trillion times on here, that all you have to do to have an accomplice is you tell the accomplice, hey, or it's your wife, hey, go, stay at the hotel. I will get to a phone eventually and I will call you and tell you where I am.
Yep.
Bingo. That's all you have to do.
Yep.
It's not that crazy.
Right.
To do that. And yeah. And so people try to, yeah, I guess,
if he's in Vancouver, Washington at 9:00 in the morning, no one's looking for him. If he's wearing regular clothes and walking down the street and uses a payphone, no one gives a damn.
well, no, because again, it was not reported where he jumped for 40 hours. And now Cooper didn't know that. So he's skedaddling out of there as quick as he can, but didn't need to. 40 hours is a long time. I mean, you give a bank robber a 40-hour head start, he's not going to be there. And as you said, and you rightly deduced this, that I'm in total agreement that the lack of anything being found speaks to him going back to wherever it was and throwing everything in the car and driving off. That's what I think. And I think about what if I had done that. You land, you stash the crap. We know that all of them stashed things. McCoy stashed it in a culvert. Rob Hetty stashed it in some bushes. I mean, these things, and they were going to come back to it. And they did, or they're going to. And so, yeah, you come back, you throw everything in the car. And I've even thought about, Cooper could have easily, like the parachute that was allegedly seen, and there's no reason for this guy to lie. There's a white round canopy seen kind of hung up like 2 days later on the Vancouver rail bridge by a Vietnam veteran. Says, hey, he called the Vancouver police, and Vancouver police said, no, that guy jumped 30 miles away from here. So like, I could almost imagine Cooper driving on the bridge wherever he was. He gets his car in Portland or wherever, drives back across the bridge, goes to Battleground or wherever, gets his stuff and drives back. And as he's crossing the bridge, it's 2 or 3 in the morning back in the 70s. Nobody's around, the day before Thanksgiving, pulls over on the bridge and just throws the shit out into the river. I could see myself doing that back then when there's no surveillance video.
It happens a lot in crimes. How many people drive 12 miles away and throw it out and think that they're good to go and they find it?
Lots. Like throwing shit in a river is like, they disposed of Moses that way. They put him in a river. It goes back to ancient. Rivers are disposals, right? I could see myself literally doing that. Stopping on the side of the road, nobody's around, I'll throw the shit out into the river. And hey, if it washes up somewhere, then maybe they'll think I died in the river or some shit.
Right.
It's a win-win. You're getting rid of it, and if somebody finds it, more the better.
Right.
That's my belief. And it's possible that maybe he threw a chunk of a bundle. I know that the diatoms don't match, but maybe that's how the money, I don't know. I just don't think that's a problem with the plant theory too, is like, as for anybody who thinks Cooper planted the money at Tina Bar, if he was going to plant money anywhere, he'd plant it, where the FBI were looking for, 10 years, whatever, he would like have it wash up on Lake Merwin or somewhere, and they would just say, oh, we knew it. He went into the lake. Cause like, remember, people don't understand this.
Well, it's people explaining something they can't explain. They want to explain it. And they're just like, well, this would happen. This would happen. And they just fill in the gap and move on. And just like, nah, that's not how it works. Okay.
So like all the talk now is, did he land in the river? Did he land in the river? Did he land in the river? No one ever said anything about him landing in the river until Tina Bar. Okay. If he drowned anywhere, it was in Lake Merwin for a decade. Right. So, that is how we shift. We go, well, so like if he planted the money, he was going to plant it in Lake Merwin, not Columbia. And, somebody asked earlier about the Columbia. Somebody said, I think it was Jay Weiss in here, mentioned Cooper land in the Columbia. And again, as I've said a trillion times, some of our best minds in the vortex have tried desperately to put him in the Columbia, and they cannot do it because the timing doesn't work. Again, the pilots themselves, said the lights of Portland were in the distance. Okay, they were in the suburbs. Okay, now to them again, I highly doubt that Bill Radicek or Captain Bill Scott knew what Orchards was or knew what Battleground was. They were from Minneapolis. They were from Minnesota. They didn't know this.
Right.
So to them, at 10,000 feet, they're seeing splotches of light beneath them. Then there's a big splotch of light in the distance. That's the suburbs north of Portland.
Right.
So that is Battleground and Orchards is what they're describing, right? And so Cooper's not going in the river because again, the river is half a mile wide, 3 miles a minute. They're over the river for 10 seconds. Again, odds, right? The odds of him no pulling, parachute disaster, 10 seconds. It's just, come on.
Right.
It's just not, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
It works if you want to answer it quickly and move on. If you were like, oh, this is what happened. I can't figure this puzzle out. It would happen if you had a small 9-piece puzzle in front of you and someone couldn't figure out and they said, we're just going to give you this piece that fits anywhere and someone's going to put it in there because that's what we do mentally. It's the easier thing to do rather than just sit there and figure out the puzzle. And
that's
so
a great point.
It's always easier to just kind of put this piece in and kind of go, this is what happened. And I don't have any skin. All of these scenarios are fine with me. I don't care.
Yep, you don't care.
But I don't like is just the simple one word. Well, this is what happened, and you move on. Like,
right.
I don't understand why you'd want to try to fix a puzzle like that or a mystery by just half-assing it and just like, yeah, this is what happened.
Well, it's kind of lazy, really. And it's again, it's like again with Eric and Tina Barr. It's like just because you can't come up with a solution for it doesn't mean that everybody else is wrong. The flight path must be wrong. The Air Force was tracking the wrong planes. The pilots were wrong. The Portland Tower didn't know what the fuck they were doing. Cliff Ammerman, who you've had on stage twice with you, who says, I watched them with my own eyes go on B-23, and Eric goes, well, I disagree. It's like, well, why? Like, why? Because you can't come up with a scenario that makes sense. So you're just going to say that, well, everybody's wrong because this one piece of evidence confuses me.
The problem is that the scenario that he comes up with doesn't make sense. So you're like, all right, I understand it doesn't make sense, but you can't come up with a nonsensical solution to a nonsensical problem.
Yes. Again, I remember we asked Mac at CooperCon last year. We were at dinner and I was just being silly. We'd been drinking and I was like, hey, Mac, I said, would you have buried, because Mac was planning on burying his money. Actually, that's why he had one of his demands was a entrenching tool, foldable shovel. And I said, hey, Mac, would you have buried your money 15 feet from a half-mile wide river? He goes, no. I was like, exactly. And again, Tina Barr, like, it's not easy to get to for one thing, okay, if you've been out there. Plus, there's buildings around there. Yeah. You're in civilization. Somebody could see you. Somebody could be walking their dog down the beach.
That's why I don't buy the whole it sat there for a long time and settled into the ground. Like, no.
No. Those fishermen, there were fishermen. Tipper was the guy's name. Tipper taught Brian Ingram how to fish. Tipper was this old guy who fished at Tina Barr for decades, actually. I think he was a World War I veteran, actually. He was a World War I veteran, Tipper. And Tipper told the media, there's lots of Tipper stuff in the newspapers from back then. Tipper's like, I've been on this beach for decades. He says, the stuff that washes up on this beach, you wouldn't believe it. It's just constant stuff. So he says, there's no doubt in my mind this is new. This wasn't here very long. And right. I think it may have only gotten pushed down by the cows. People don't realize this. So the cows. So
let's hear the cow theory.
Well, that's interesting. So like the Fazios talk about this is that, and I write about this in my Tina Barr chapter, which I wasn't even going to write a Tina Barr chapter, but I did. It's a good way. It's probably the best chapter in my book, actually, I think. I'm proud of it. But anyway, so the Fazios talked about how, so they had cattle And their cattle, actually, the week before Tina Bar was found, their cattle had gotten out. Somehow, like a gate was left open. So the entire beach was pockmarked with cow tracks. And in fact, when Brian and them, one of the reasons Brian was smoothing out a spot for the fire was all the cow tracks that had been pocked. So, I mean, cows are going to step things and push it down. So, it's possible that it washed up. Again, but the problem is, of course, we got the diatoms, and it's like, you know,
I don't have an answer for a Tina Bar, but I don't think there's any way that it floated there, got stuck there, and I'll take cows over it coming down the river somehow. I just don't see how does it stop there and then sink there. Like if you were talking to that guy, so you were like, how many times was that space underwater?
A lot, actually.
I thought it was only twice in like the 9 years.
No, not that's Eric saying that. Not true. No, in fact, it flooded every year. Every year they're underwater. They said.
How does it?
In fact, it was underwater 2 weeks earlier. So, yeah, but again, the diatoms, though. I mean, it's like, yeah.
That's the thing. It never gets solved. We're going to find out that I won't say a lot. We'll be interested in. That's why I'm always interested in what they think and what they propose, and then these things get solved and what really happens. Sometimes they're right and sometimes they're wrong, and you have to take something wrong and see how much it's wrong and apply that to other things. Hey, over here they thought this, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try to figure things out or use science or whatever. It's just saying that no one's ever proposed like this is what I think happened, and then we find out and it's exactly what happened. Things are off all the time, and so you have to looking into this. You have to like when Tom doesn't even speak sort of in concrete words about the tie. Even that, he's like, okay, well, it could mean this, or could mean this, could mean this. And so, I don't know. I just, I want to know, obviously, who did it and everything, but I'm also going to make a mental note of like, wow, this is what all we thought was wrong.
Well, so, I mean, on a different note, as we wrap up here, so Chris Brower, our bloodhound, he's been really looking into, and I like his approach to this with Tina Bar, is he's been looking into the fact that that the Orchards area had, and I'll put it up on the screen, the Orchards area, Cooper's most likely spot to jump, I think, had sand and gravel operations.
So I heard you and Chris Cunningham talking about it. I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, so here's a photograph that Brower found from 1971, people, of orchards. That's orchards right there. And right there are big, huge sand pits where they supplied sand throughout the region, I guess. Okay. And Tina Bar, all of the sand on there is not natural. That's not a natural beach. They have to get sand there to like curb erosion and things like that. So now the Fazios, Eric says he asked them, I should probably ask him myself, but Eric says he asked them that if they ever brought sand in. And they said no, but I don't know how they couldn't have. I mean, because I think that it beach erodes. So, but I think that's a damn good theory.
Yeah.
Because that's right over the flight path. Even if he didn't jump there, that's right over the flight path is orchards. So
when he said that, I was like, wow, I haven't heard that, but that's really interesting.
It's really good, actually. And I think that, it explains also, it doesn't have to wash up. It just has to get wet during a flood,
right?
Which I think is possible, for sure. But let's see. All right. Well, look. All right, folks. Well, look. We're gonna wrap it up here. It's 3 hours. Rob, thank you so much, man. This has been really good to have the Cooper layman on here.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what questions people have because I know there's other laymen out there.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, so anyway, all right, folks. Well, good night, and Rob, Auf Wiedersehen. Good night, and to everyone, God bless us, one and all.
I appreciate it.
See ya.